Democrats replace Biden. Since the presidential debate on June the 27th, the headlines have been relentless. Biden's ratings have been slipping, and donors and party members alike have been joining calls for him to step out of the race. But Biden believes he is the person best placed to beat Donald Trump and is refusing to budge. And he still does have staunch supporters. After all, he was democratically elected. Can the Democrats replace Biden? The answer is yes, but it would be unprecedented. And it's unclear whether Kamala Harris would do better in the polls. But as our second expert witness, Ed Kilgore, points out, a switch of horses is by no means something the Democrats can afford to rule out.
The bottom line is this: if Biden decides to get out and hands it off to Harris, she will win the nomination almost certainly, quickly, unless something really strange happens. And it's a year when strange things have happened.
This inquiry was presented by me, Tanya Beckett, produced by Louise Clark, researched by Matt Toulson, edited by Tara McDermott, and the studio manager was Nikki Edwards.
I'm Saroja Coelho here on CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Magandang umaga. Good morning, Manitoba. Faith Fundal here in Studio 15 at Portage and Spence. This is Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, everywhere on the CBC Listen app, and of course, streaming online on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. It is Wednesday morning, July the 17th, and good morning as well to your CBC Winnipeg local news desk person, Heather Wells. Hello.
Hello, good morning. Well, dozens of tenants of a Winnipeg apartment complex say they have been evicted without warning. They were living at 285 College Avenue until late last week when they were ordered out. One of them, Megan Levasseur, says she didn't receive an eviction notice, and she says all of her belongings were thrown in a pile of garbage behind the building along with all the other tenants' belongings. We're going to hear more about what happened there. And Winnipeg City Councillors will soon have to decide whether to award a construction contract that could eventually turn into $1 billion worth of work. It's a plan to build a biosolids processing facility at the North End Water Pollution Control Centre. We'll hear more in our next local news at 6:30.
Looking forward to it. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Lots to come here on the program. As it turns out, all that glitters might not actually be gold. A local jeweler, a jewelry appraiser, says he's seeing a growing number of customers coming to his store with fake gold in hand. And now he is warning Winnipeggers to be on the lookout. Also, in our last half hour of the program, microplastics are now showing up in fillets of fish, well beyond the gut, where scientists have typically seen them. It's according to new research out today. The study's author from the University of Manitoba joins us for those details. That's at 8:10. In this first hour of the program, though, how well protected are Canadian politicians from security threats? We'll hear from an international relations professor about the RCMP and its capacity. First on the program, though, that attempt also has others looking at threats to political leaders here in Canada. We'll hear from a former Manitoba premier who says he himself has had threats. That conversation coming up here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Faith Fundal in for Marcy Maracusa. Abby Adiemi is our tech and music producer. Corey Funk is our studio director. Expecting sun and cloud near noon for Winnipeg today. A high of 24 with a humidex 26. Lots more to come after World Report. Stay tuned.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlanger sitting in for Tom Power. Not many people have had the kind of success and longevity in music that Jim Cuddy has had. He looks back at some key moments from his storied career and talks about his brand new solo album, All the World Fades Away.
Q, this morning at 10, 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Marcia Young. Crews in Toronto are making progress to restore power to thousands of residents, and some major roads are starting to open up. A series of thunderstorms yesterday caused record rainfall and flash flooding in Toronto and knocked out much of the city's west end. The CBC's Angie Seth is out on the streets of Toronto and joins us now. Angie, the power is still out in some areas of the city. What are Torontonians waking up to this morning?
Many of them are going to be breaking up to still a dark home, or, because there is still a number of areas in the city in which power has yet to be restored. That's a real telltale sign of the type of storm that we saw coming in fast and furious and leaving with it huge amounts of water. As a result, it's become very, very challenging. Many homes have been flooded, whether you're dealing with a little bit of flooding or quite a bit of flooding, where in some cases you saw water sort of gushing into their homes, depending on where they are, especially any areas that were near open waterways, like rivers, et cetera, which we saw overflowing onto roadways. And we bring in the roadways as well, because we know that several of those major routes we know are Don Valley Parkway, which is a major route, areas along the Gardner as well, were completely flooded. On Lake Shore, which is right where Lake Ontario is, we saw quite a bit of water in those areas as well. But it brings back the question of what needs to be done in the city in order to continue to upgrade its infrastructure and deal, of course, with what we've been seeing in this change of weather. We've talked a lot about climate change. The mayor, Olivia Chow, had more to say about this. Take a listen.
The federal government had provided some funding on the floodplain, but not enough. There's a request with them. The provincial government have stepped up somewhat. The federal and the provincial government can partner with us so that we can do a lot more flood mitigation measures.
Some of those areas are still closed as they're dealing with the cleanup. And if there's any repairs that need to be done, they get access to them as quickly as possible.
Thanks so much, Angie.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Angie Seth reporting in Toronto. The Republican nominee for vice president will address his party's convention today. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance was tapped to be Donald Trump's running mate, but Vance is still new to the party. He has been a senator for 2 years. The CBC's Ithel Musa is joining us now from Milwaukee at the Republican National Convention. And Ithel, what are Republicans telling you about J.D. Vance?
Well, they don't know a whole lot about him, and tonight's headlining address will be Vance's first speech as the Republican vice presidential nominee, and it will be his first opportunity to introduce himself to a national audience. This is a man who went from being a major critic of Trump to one of his biggest supporters. The two are closely aligned on issues like trade, foreign policy, and immigration. We'll likely hear Vance address some of those issues today. I spoke to people at the Republican National Convention yesterday, and what really captivated them is his backstory. Vance is the author of the best-selling memoir, Hillbilly Elegy. The book and subsequent film is about his rural, poverty-stricken roots, and for some, his rise out of that and his journey to becoming a venture capitalist and a Yale Law graduate is inspiring. Vance is also a Marine veteran, which several people I spoke to mentioned. Here's more from delegates.
Him being a Marine, once a Marine, always a Marine. So I know he has the integrity. I know he has the wherewithal.
Is he really going to support Trump? There's been some discord between them in the past. And as a young person, I like seeing a guy under 40.
And I believe his military background will give him the strong leadership. I look for a person that has strong family values.
Vance's speech tonight comes after former presidential rivals Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis spoke on Tuesday. What did they say?
Yeah, that's right. Last night, former political adversaries took to the stage to heap praise on Donald Trump. Haley told delegates that Trump had asked her to speak at this convention in the name of unity, and last night she delivered, urging members to set aside differences and rally behind Trump. Meanwhile, DeSantis took the opportunity to criticize Democrats. He also took a swipe at Biden's age.
All right, thank you, Ithel.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Ithel Musa in Milwaukee. Canada-U.S. relations are top of mind today in Halifax. It is the final day of meetings for Canada's premiers. There's been significant discussion so far about the trade relationship between the two countries. And as Olivia Stefanovich reports, there are concerns about what a new U.S. administration could bring.
We always believe in Buy North America.
It's Ontario Premier Doug Ford's counter to Buy America, a pitch to ease U.S. protectionism, at least when it comes to Canada.
We don't want to see the 10% tariffs.
Ford didn't mention Donald Trump by name, but the former U.S. president's re-election bid is causing premiers to strategize at their summer gathering this week in Halifax. The provincial and territorial leaders concerned they could see the return of Trump's 10% tax on Canadian aluminum imports, or something worse.
The importance of the trade relationship it is very, very significant, and that's one that needs to be maintained.
Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston is the host of this week's meetings. He says the provincial and territorial leaders are also bracing for possible retaliation over Canada's failure to meet NATO's defense spending target. The federal government isn't expected to spend 2% of its GDP on defense until 2032.
How would certain U.S. administrations look on Canada if they weren't to meet those obligations?
If he returns to the Oval Office, Trump is promising a worldwide tariff on imported goods, stricter than any trade policy from his first term. Trump would also have to revisit the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Free Trade Agreement he helped restructure, up for review in 2026. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Halifax.
Schools and universities across Bangladesh are closed until further notices. The 6 people have been killed in ongoing protests. Students have been demonstrating for days. They are upset about a government system that gives a third of public sector jobs to relatives of war heroes, specifically the children of those who fought for Bangladesh's independence from Pakistan in the early 1970s. The students say the system is discriminatory and that the jobs should be based on merit. Youth unemployment is high in Bangladesh. The country's top court suspended the current system last week, but students want it permanently removed. Cyanide poisoning was the likely cause of the deaths of 6 foreigners at a luxury hotel in Thailand. The chief of the Thai Police Services Forensic Unit says cyanide was inside a teapot, mugs, and in the blood samples of some of the deceased. He also said at a news conference this morning the suspected killer is among the dead. Officers were called yesterday to Bangkok's Grand Hyatt Erawan Hotel. The 6 people are Vietnamese and American nationals. They were found dead in a hotel room. Police say an interview with family members of the victims indicate there had been a dispute about debt. Trucking is a growth industry in Canada, but some long-haul drivers are encountering a new hazard. Companies are not paying their wages. CBC investigative reporter Jonathan Gatehouse has more on the problem and the drivers' efforts to fight back.
It started with a TikTok video, a Punjabi-speaking influencer endorsing a new Ontario trucking company earlier this year. 23-year-old Nirbesh Singh saw the ad and signed up. But after his second long-haul trip to the U.S., the firm stopped paying. Now he's out $4,000.
Like my car payments, rent, I get behind.
Trucking is a big business in this country, employing almost 350,000 people, according to Transport Canada. But as the industry grows, so too do complaints about missing pay. Last year, the federal government issued 542 wage payment orders against trucking companies. This year, the pace has almost doubled. Paralegal Kevin Cordehy helps truckers like Singh get their money back.
Again, right, we see a trend of these companies, they owe a lot of wages. And instead of paying their workers before they move on to purchasing a different company, they bankrupt the company and repeat the process all over again.
CBC News reached out to the owner of Navkin, the trucking firm that employed Nirbesh Singh. Hardev Tagger started that company in February after his previous trucking business hit what he calls serious financial problems. Tagger admits he owes about $18,000 to ex-Navkin employees, money he says he doesn't have but will pay back when he can. Meanwhile, Singh has filed a formal complaint with the federal government but holds out little hope of seeing his lost pay.
Trucking is major part of Canada, but the people here are like abusing it. So
Jonathan Gatehouse, CBC News, Brampton.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Magandang umaga. Good morning, Manitoba. Faith Fundal here in Studio 15 at Portage and Spence. This is Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. And good morning to the folks watching on CBC Television and streaming us on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Coming up on the program, the high cost of gluten-free products and the impact that's having on some families' budgets. We'll get that story from the CBC's Angela McIver. Also, we'll hear from International Relations Professor Stephanie Carvin about the RCMP's ability to protect Canadian politicians in times of danger. Here in Manitoba, we'll hear from a former premier who says he has had threats himself. This as the assassination attempt against Donald Trump has folks looking at threats to political leaders. That conversation coming up here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Stay tuned. Let's head to your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Heather Wells joining us now. Good morning.
Good morning. New allegations today about the care provided to high-risk youth living in for-profit foster homes. Newly unsealed documents obtained by CBC News allege workers at Spirit Rising House that provided underage kids with cannabis were also driving the children in care to homes where they were being exploited. We will hear this update from our I-Team coming up. And dozens of tenants at a Winnipeg apartment complex say they have been evicted without warning. They were living at 285 College Avenue until late last week when they were ordered out. Some say their belongings were thrown in a pile of garbage behind the building. Others worry about where these people now will end up. Our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. We're going to talk to Abby Adiemi, who is following the weather today. It was like I came to work today and I thought, it's cooler. What is happening?
It sure felt like fall, you know. We're just enjoying that break because the heat is actually returning. By the weekend, we should be getting back to the range of the 30s again. But right now, we're starting cool in the city. It's clear outside, 12 degrees in the wind in the city. We're expecting sunny skies today. Then we'll see a transition to a mix of sun and clouds developing near the noon period. Highs for today will get to 24 in the city. And for tonight, we're going to see the skies clear up even more after some clouds that we will be experiencing in the afternoon period. And we will still see some cool conditions later in the evening. We're going to cool down to around 11 degrees. And a sneak peek into tomorrow, yes, we should be expecting that sunny condition. And we will be getting back into the range of the 30s with the humidity from tomorrow. But for today in the city, it's currently 12 degrees and clear. Looking at other parts of the province, Thompson is actually cool with some shallow fog at the moment at 5 degrees. Churchill 14 and mostly cloudy. Brandon 6 sunny. Dauphin 8 sunny. Gimli 10 sunny. Steinbach Morris 9 and 7 also seeing some sunny stats. Right now in Winnipeg, it is 12 degrees and we're heading to a high of 24.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
We're at just about 14 minutes after 6 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. Corey Funk is following your commute, our studio director. Good morning.
I did that thing this morning where I just get dressed assuming it's mid-July and then walk out the door, hop on my bike and start biking and realize, holy smokes, it feels like mid-October.
Big mistake, wasn't it?
Yes, but I'm like, there's no way I'm not going to be putting on mitts. There's no way. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And then my hands are still warming up.
The best I did was, all right, I'll put on a sweater or a pretend sweater.
Pretend sweater, exactly.
So
a light sweater. Yeah, really the commute though, otherwise, besides being chilly, is pretty quiet out there. Haven't heard any major issues. But if you're walking, biking, driving, you see something going on, give me a call on the CBC computer line. I'll let folks know what you're seeing out there. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Police in the United States are still trying to understand why a man tried to kill former President Donald Trump. Canada is no stranger to political violence and threats. Former Manitoba Premier Kelvin Goertzen knows this firsthand after more than 2 decades in office. The progressive conservative MLA for Steinbach spoke outside the legislative building. Here's part of his conversation with the CBC's Alana Cole.
Well, I think like everybody, your initial reaction is shock, even though we've seen those sort of things happen in the U.S. before. Thankfully, they're infrequent. Obviously, very concerned that someone was killed, and everybody's hearts goes out to that particular family, somebody who was just attending a rally. But then also relief that that former president wasn't injured more. So you are concerned, obviously, and you worry about what it means for the future, and you certainly hope that these things are preventable in the future as well.
Here in Manitoba, have you ever dealt with the security threat? Have you ever received any kinds of threats?
Yeah, I think anybody who's been elected for a reasonable amount of time has received some degree of threats. So I've been elected for 20 years. So over those 21 years, certainly I've received threats of varying degrees. Sometimes it is very specific in terms of the threats. Sometimes it's, where you feel a bit threatened, right? You might be in a grocery store or at a sporting event and somebody approaches you in an aggressive way. And often you're with your family, and so that's particularly concerning. Sometimes the threats are directed towards your family. So those are very concerning things. I think that's been the case for a long time for people in public life. I do think that over the last few years in particular, the frequency and the intensity of them have grown. And so, you've seen the reaction of that from those in elected life in terms of some of the changes that have happened in terms of security. And we don't like that. We're politicians. We get elected because we want to be with people. That's the best part of the job, is being with people. And 99.9% of the people in Manitoba are incredibly gracious, even if they don't agree with you in terms of your policy positions. But the reality is that there's a small percentage that measures have to be taken for to protect those who are in elected office and those who are around those who are in elected office.
How does it feel to be someone who, has been elected and to deal with threats or to receive threats or be put in situations where you feel threatened?
I think quite often you are almost more concerned about those that are around you. So, personally, when I've encountered those situations, either virtually or in person, I'm more concerned about my family if I'm with them, or sometimes you're with staff members. And so that's almost my first reaction, is more because those individuals didn't really sign up for the job. And none of us sign up for the job in elected life to be threatened. But there's an understanding that there are certain things that come with that job when you're a public official. But our families are sometimes a little bit more bystander to that, but they get drawn into that, or staff or others that you're with get drawn into it. So that's usually my first concern, is concern for those who are around me.
You mentioned that you think that, is it that you're hearing about it more, or you're seeing it more, or are you, what do you think is happening now when it comes to these types of threats?
Well, there's no doubt there's more of it, and I hear that from elected officials of all political stripes. So it isn't a partisan issue. Those who are in different political parties have been feeling it too. Having served as the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice in the province not that long ago, I was certainly privy to threat assessments, and there's an ongoing threat assessment that is done when it comes to elected officials and the building itself. And there has been ebbs and flows to that, but certainly I think that there's been an intensity increase over the last number of years when it comes to looking at the threat assessment on elected officials and then the building itself. So it is something that has gotten worse over time. There's probably a lot of different reasons for that. But ultimately, I think, all of us bear some responsibility, including elected officials, to try to do what we can to bring down that temperature and to reduce that.
Why do you think that it's gotten worse?
There's a lot of different things. Sometimes people talk about social media and the ability to anonymously reach out and threaten individuals, not just elected officials, but anybody who's well known in society, I think, can bear the brunt of that. So those sort of anonymous vehicles are part of that, I think. I think we all bear some responsibility, including elected officials, in terms of how we message things. That's very important, I think. I think we have to bring down the temperature. referring to individuals as our enemies or referring to those we don't agree with maybe as having sort of evil intentions. I think we've got to be careful about that sort of thing because it does give license or permission sometimes to our own supporters and to say those sort of things. And all of that ratchets up intensity. Politics is always going to be intense. There's no question about it. It's always rough and tumble. It's been that way for a long time. It's part of a democratic process where you can aggressively disagree with the government or the opposition. That is actually important. But you can't have something that reaches a boiling point and stays at a boiling point for a long period of time without there being repercussions. And I think politics has been at a boiling point now, both in Canada and the United States, for quite a while now, and the temperature has to come down.
I think I read today that when you were premier, you didn't have security, but you were the last premier to not have security with you.
That's right. So, I mean, it was a relatively short period of time, but I drove myself around and, I still went to Bomber games and was out in the public because that's what I want to do, right? You want to be with people. That's why we run for elected office. But then as Attorney General, doing a threat assessment and talking to justice officials, we were one of the last provinces in Canada that didn't have, more full-time security for their premier. And so we thought it was important to build that up. It wasn't a political issue. The NDP at the time, who were in opposition, didn't make a political issue about it, and I give them credit for that. Mr. Canoe now has similar security, and that's important, and he should have that. And we don't make a political issue about it. So it's a reality of where we are today. I don't think anybody wishes it was like that. In some ways, we all sort of look nostalgically at the time when you could walk around the legislature, as elected officials and as visitors and not have any of that security, but you have to respond to the reality of what's happening in society.
That was Progressive Conservative MLA and former Premier Kelvin Goertzen speaking with the CBC's Alana Cole. We're going to continue this conversation in our next half hour of the program. We'll hear from International Relations Professor Stephanie Carvin about the RCMP's ability to protect Canadian politicians in times of danger. That's still to come.
Sometimes ads are banned for violence.
Good morning, world.
Sometimes ad bans are puzzling.
Rage against the dying of the light.
Huh? But oftentimes, banning an ad can be pure rocket fuel.
There's a orangutan in my bedroom, and I don't know what to do.
God save the commercial when ads are banned on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly, Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen.
22 minutes after 6 o'clock here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, everywhere on the CBC Listen app and on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Good morning. Up next... If that's a sound that puts you on edge, you're not alone. High grocery prices are something everyone is coping with these days. But for people with celiac disease or gluten intolerance, grocery bills are even worse. According to Celiac Canada, gluten-free products have always been 150 to 200% more expensive than food with gluten. Since the pandemic, though, the difference is more like 200 to 500%. Consumer Affairs reporter Angela McIver has been speaking with families and joins us with more now. Good morning.
Good morning.
What are you hearing from folks living on gluten-free diets?
Yeah, so I've talked to quite a few families actually, and when it comes to the cost, they're stressed. And when you see their grocery bills, you can certainly understand why. Two women who have celiac disease and their children do as well told me their annual grocery budget is $10,000 to $15,000 more than the average household. So think about what you or I might spend each year on groceries and then add the cost of a small travel trailer on top of that.
Wow. Did folks walk you through their bills?
They sure did. So people with celiac are used to tracking their expenses for tax purposes. Celiac is an autoimmune disease when people who have it consume gluten, which is found in wheat, rye, barley, and contaminated oats. They get sick. Ashley Hickey is very conscious of that. She has celiac, and so does her 7-year-old son, Alex. She went through the trouble of logging her expenses into a spreadsheet, and even she was surprised. Her grocery bill for the month of June was $2,600.
And I actually said to my husband, I said, wow, I can't believe how expensive this is. I didn't realize my grocery bill was that bad. And I said, wow, we either need to get, a rice flour farm or something because this is insane. And that doesn't even include, that grocery budget of, in my case, of over $2,600 a month. Doesn't include if we go to a restaurant, doesn't include, pops, drinks, any treats that we have. That is just our core grocery bill.
And again, that was Ashley Hickey. Her grocery bill, by the way, feeds her family of 4. I also went shopping with another woman who has celiac. Her name is Heather Ewell, and her 2 teenage daughters have celiac as well. And let me tell you, it was an eye-opening experience.
Talk more about that. How so?
Well, not only did Heather educate me, about how difficult it can be to navigate the grocery store, but we bought key items in the gluten-free variety and with gluten, and then we compared the prices. Obviously, I saw the numbers in Ashley's spreadsheet, but there's something about seeing it for yourself in the grocery store that really hits home.
So what sorts of items did you look for then?
So we picked up flour, bread, hamburger buns, pasta, crackers, deli meat, and a package of Oreos. So 7 items altogether. And I had the cart with gluten. It totaled $29.74. Heather had the gluten-free items, and her cart came to $62.73. So more than double the price. And all of those products were smaller with fewer grams. And even she couldn't believe it.
That's shocking for me. And then if I think about the fact that I think only one product was actually the equivalent weight, yours are all more quantity and it's less than half the price. And that's put that by a family of 3. And then my husband knows that he's gluten-free too because it's just easier. It explains a lot for my finances.
And again, that was Heather Ewell, and we were shopping at the Atlantic Superstore.
Angela, why is there such a disparity between gluten-free and gluten products?
Well, everyone seems to be pointing their fingers to food manufacturers. Melissa Secord is National Executive Director at Celiac Canada, and she says really since the pandemic, prices have skyrocketed.
And the problem with gluten-free is it's 150 to 500% more than regular food items because it's specially formulated. There are certain standards that manufacturers have to follow to keep it safe, as well as the ingredients themselves, because the complexity are more expensive. So it's just more expensive.
And again, that's Melissa Secord with Celiac Canada. She says because of these high costs, they're now pushing government to increase the federal tax credit.
Right. You mentioned earlier that people can get a tax break by tracking their expenses, right?
Yeah, and so many people do it, but they say it's not really worth it. They're tracking every receipt and inputting all of the relevant expenses only to get back an average of $30 to $50 for the entire year. And this is why Celiac Canada is now asking for a flat medical tax claim of $1,000 for every person who is diagnosed with celiac.
Right now, it's a non-refundable tax credit. So if you're in a tax bracket where you don't actually have enough income, it's very difficult to claim. So it's really difficult. And we also don't qualify for disability. We were actually removed from disability benefits, where in the US, celiac disease is seen as a disability. So the system that they've created actually doesn't work. It's cumbersome, almost inaccessible, and really gives zero relief to people. So we're trying to offer some solutions that are very doable, and we're having some success and some acknowledgement of the pain and suffering for our community. So we're really hoping there'll be some changes.
Now, I also reached out to the Federal Department of Finance, and in an email statement, it said that it welcomes all suggestions on how to better support Canadians, including those with gluten intolerances and celiac disease. However, the department said it would be inappropriate to speculate on any potential or prospective change.
She mentioned the U.S. having better disability benefits. Is that the gold standard then?
Actually, Secord said Italy is the one. It's considered a gluten-free haven. I don't know about you, Faith, but when I think of Italy, I think pasta, bread, pizza. But when it comes to gluten-free, they take it seriously, and there are many options. So the selection is there as well as the prices. So I will leave you with that food for thought today.
Appreciate your work on this. Thank you, and take good care.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Angela McIver is a consumer affairs reporter for CBC. We reached her this morning in Halifax. 29 minutes after 6 o'clock here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Still to come, the latest data shows inflation is cooling. What is that going to mean for interest rates? The CBC's Kristalee Ramlakan will join us with your business report. Coming up here on the program, stay tuned. We'll also talk more about security for Canadian politicians. This after the attempted assassination of former U.S. President Donald Trump. Stay tuned for all of that coming up here on the program after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's a little bit chilly out there this morning. 12 degrees right now in downtown Winnipeg. We will warm up to 24, and then we really start to heat things up by the end of the week. New allegations today about the care provided to high-risk youth living in for-profit foster homes. CBC I-Team's Caroline Bargoot has this update.
Recently unsealed search warrants raise allegations about a foster care provider the province cut ties with in February. Spirit Rising House ran foster homes and specialized group homes for 34 high-risk youth in care until it was discovered staff had been giving the kids cannabis as a harm reduction strategy. Earlier this year, Winnipeg police swore an affidavit in court to get a judge to authorize search warrants to look for evidence as part of a criminal investigation into the for-profit company. Police said staff members were criminally negligent, which caused numerous children to suffer bodily harm. They alleged after it became public that staff were giving kids cannabis, they were directed not to. So instead, some staff would drive the youth to a drug dealer's house to get their own. Police also alleged some staff drove kids to homes they knew they'd be sexually exploited in. CBC has also been told several arrests have been made and charges are pending. Police wouldn't comment on any of that. All they'll say is they're investigating. Caroline Bargoot, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Dozens of people in Winnipeg say they were forced out of their apartment building over the weekend, ordered out of 285 College Avenue. Several people tell CBC the building had been sold. Ivy Palmer says her brother had rented there for 4 years. He called her in a panic last week, saying people were ordering him out.
I'm worried about all the people that have to leave this place and have nothing. And I'm worried that all of these people are going to fall through the crack, my brother included.
The Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service tells CBC it did not order anyone out. A spokesperson says the owner made the decision to vacate that property. A person who was seen guarding the door at 285 College yesterday told our reporter the owner did not want to be interviewed. Now, the head of St. Boniface StreetLink says her organization housed people in need at 285 College. Now, Marion Willis plans to file a complaint with the Manitoba Human Rights Commission over the way the residents were treated.
This was the most blatant violation of people's human rights. These folks were treated like they were less than human. It was absolutely horrific.
Willis says her group is working to find out where the displaced residents are going and what supports they need. Provincial transportation officials were in Carberry last night talking about the intersection of Highway 5 and the Trans-Canada Highway. That is where a bus crash killed 17 seniors from the Dauphin area last year. People were shown 3 potential new designs for that intersection. Carberry CAO Grady Stevenson is also the deputy fire chief with the Carberry North Cypress Langford Fire Department. He says every year sees 4 to 6 crashes at that intersection.
Something needs to change. To make the collisions less severe. We're not going to eliminate all the mistakes that are made there, but if we can reduce the outcomes to less tragic and less impactful, then we're doing something right.
Once a design is selected, construction is expected to begin in late 2025 and be completed by fall of 2026. The attempted assassination of Donald Trump in the U.S. last weekend has renewed attention on the kinds of threats public officials can face. A House of Commons committee was recently told the number of files related to threats to members of Parliament, either direct or indirect, has grown from 8 files in 2019 to 530 last year. The chair of the committee is Winnipeg Liberal MP Ben Carr.
There was some very concerning and pretty moving testimony on the part of members of Parliament from all political stripes that speak to the degree of this problem and the extent to which we have to address it and be aware of it.
Carr says security measures are in place in MPs' offices across the country. A vintage plane with a deep connection to Winnipeg. The Avro Lancaster, a rare World War II bomber, landing yesterday. It is a 2-day stopover in Winnipeg, and it's attracted visitors with their families' wartime stories. Roy McLean came from Morden to see the plane. His father was a pilot in World War II.
Dad told us lots of stories when we were young about missions that they went on. Our dad also earned a Distinguished Flying Cross, and something we're pretty proud of. I still have all his medals at home. It's just very interesting history. Obviously, it touches my heart.
The Mynarski Memorial Lancaster is named after Andrew Mynarski, who grew up in Winnipeg's North End. The pilot officer died in 1944 after trying to rescue a trapped crew member on a Lancaster that was going down. The Mynarski Memorial Lancaster is on display today at the Royal Aviation Museum of Western Canada. You can find more Manitoba news on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Magandang umaga, good morning Manitoba. Faith Fundal here in Studio 15 at Portage and Spence. This is Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Hello as well to the folks watching us on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream and on CBC Television. I am filling in for Marcy Marcusa. Hello also, it's like a hello also kind of day, to everybody, including Abby Adiemi, who's been following the weather.
Yes, we're seeing the sunrise. Look on the side of the buildings. They're making their appearance right now. It's still clear and cool, 12 degrees in the city. We're expecting a mix of sunshine and clouds developing by the noon period. We'll warm up to 24 in the city. And for tonight, the skies will gradually clear up after the early cloudy cover we're going to be seeing in the afternoon period. Because it's going to be like a tap dance, a sun and a cloud thing. And then we'll cool off to 11 degrees later tonight. But tomorrow, it's going to be a return of the 30s because we're going to warm up to 27 and then it's going to be feeling more like 30. Brandon is currently sitting at 6 degrees and mainly sunny at the moment. We'll see a mix of sun and clouds by the noon period. Highs will be reaching 24. And Thompson at 5 degrees at the moment. Some shallow fog you're seeing at this moment. So if you're on the roads, please be careful. You'll see sunny skies later. Then you see a transition to a mix of sun and clouds by the afternoon period. You'll be getting to a high of 25. Further north in Churchill, currently 14 degrees and mostly cloudy. Today you get plenty of sunshine in the forecast, a high of 26. Down in Dauphin, currently 8 degrees and sunny. I expect more of sunny skies, then a transition to a mix of sun and clouds by the noon period, reaching a high of 25. Gimli sitting at 10 at the moment, also enjoying the sunny stat. For the Interlake region, sunny skies becoming a mix of sun and clouds by the noon period, a high of 24. Steinbach also sunny at 9. Expect this sunny condition to make a transition to a mix of sun and clouds by the noon period, and you'd warm up to 24. Finally, Morris, you're sitting at 8 degrees, also enjoying the sunny stat. For the Pembina Valley region, these sunny skies will make a transition to a mix of sun and clouds by the noon period also, and you will warm up to 24. Right now, Winnipeg, a cool start to Wednesday. It's 12 degrees. We're going to see a mix of sun and clouds, which is what we're expecting for most of the day. I'll call it slightly warmer. Not as warm as our seasonal, but the high for today would get to 24. We do warm up starting tomorrow.
All right, thanks very much.
Brace for it.
Can't wait. Abby Adiemi, our tech and music producer. Corey Funk has been following the commute this morning. Hello.
Hello. It's weird to say, but if you're biking, wear mitts.
It's 12 degrees is 12 degrees.
I know. I'm even looking at the airport right now. Technically, according to Environment Canada, it's 9 degrees at the airport.
Ridiculous.
And I definitely biked in, and I froze my knees. So be careful out there, or just don't be careful. Well, yes, be careful, but just like it's cold. It's cold. That's really the only issue that I've heard of so far. But if you do see something else going on out there, if you're walking, biking, driving, let me know what you're seeing or feeling. If you want to complain about the cold, I'm here for you too. 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks very much. Thank you. Corey Funker, studio director. We're at 21 minutes before 7 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. Christy Ramlakan joining us with a business report. Good morning.
Hello, good morning, Faith.
And also, just like the weather in Winnipeg, inflation seems to also be cooling. I mean, what might this mean for interest rates, do you think?
Yes, that is right. So annual inflation eased last month to 2.7% from the 2.9% that we saw in May. And that was largely due to slower increases in gas prices. And so these new numbers from yesterday are the latest reading before the Bank of Canada's next interest rate decision 1 week from today. So with this continued slowdown in the economy, some economists are calling for another rate cut of 0.25 percentage point to bring the key interest rate to 4.5%. Here's Catherine Judge, who is a senior economist at CIBC.
Forward-looking indicators are very weak. You've seen a significant increase in the unemployment rate. Spending intentions data is weak. And then, of course, we have population growth slowing, which will be a hit to demand as well. So really, there's nothing stopping the Bank of Canada from cutting. And you have to remember, interest rates are at restrictive levels and will still be for some time. Our predicted so-called neutral rate for this cycle is 2.75%. So anytime you're above that level, you're actually choking off economic activity.
Now let's dig into why inflation is cooling. Lower prices for durable goods, so that's things that people do not buy as often. Vehicle inventories are up and prices saw the largest annual decline in more than 9 years. People paid less for furniture with supply chains smoothing out. And, with higher interest rates, many are spending less on big ticket items, which may be contributing to lower demand and therefore lower prices. But grocery prices are higher for the second month in a row after mostly falling since January of last year when prices rose just over 11% annually. The cost of dairy products, fresh vegetables, and non-alcoholic beverages are up. And those looking at summer travel, airfares are up due to limited competition and capacity.
Usually when I start to see advertisements from all sorts of airlines, I think, there's going to be some problems with the prices. There's a reason why they're sending all these ads. Let's stick with the economy here because markets continue to rally. What's your sense of what's behind that?
Well, Canada's main stock index is up due to gains in industrial and tech stocks. U.S. stock markets are also up. They are being boosted by several earnings reports from major companies that were better than expected. And we've seen months of record-breaking gains led mainly by large tech stocks in the U.S. Gold also hit a record high as hopes for interest rate cuts in the U.S. grow. So for more on this year's Colin Szynski, who is the chief market strategist at SIA Wealth Management.
Certainly, the big rally in gold has a huge help for Canada, but the other commodity markets have struggled. And one of the problems was that although people are encouraged with the U.S., China's economy has been struggling. So it's a bit double-edged here, where some things are doing really well, but on the other hand, oil and copper have not been doing as well.
Now, as I just mentioned, earnings season just started, so there's a lot of news on the way soon, so we could see an active month in the markets.
Apparently, Disney is trying to chill and following the business strategy of Netflix. What are we talking about here?
Yes, so the entertainment giant wants to be as addictive. And of course, Netflix is famous for releasing batches of episodes for binge watching. So Netflix and chill. Now, Disney has spent years trying to attract new subscribers to its streaming services like Disney Plus and wants to keep people watching. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that the major media company is developing a roster of new features to lengthen the amount of time that people watch to generate more revenue from ad sales. So new features in the works include a more personalized algorithm based on users' history and tastes, customized promotional art for new shows, and emails sent to viewers who stop watching in the middle of a series reminding them to finish. So some could roll out in the next 6 months. It's also looking into pop-up live channels for viewers who don't have the time or energy to scroll through all the viewing options, such as channels that play the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe or popular series like The Simpsons from start to finish. And of course, increasing engagement and reducing cancellations are key in making the streaming business actually profitable.
Sounds like my TV is about to get a lot more complicated. We'll see. Crystalie, the markets, what's happening there so far?
In Europe, markets are falling as UK inflation holds steady. Germany, the UK, and France are all down. In Asia, markets are mixed. Japan and Shanghai are both down. Hong Kong is up. Oil is up 30 cents to 81.06 US per barrel. Gold is up $4.90 to $2,472.80 US per ounce. And the dollar is up 0.05 of a cent to 73.2 cents US.
Have a good Wednesday, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Take good care.
You too. Thanks, Faith.
It's Chrisley Ramlakan with your business news. Coming up to 15 minutes before 7 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Listen app. Hello to the folks watching on CBC Television and streaming us on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. By the end of last year, nearly 500,000 Canadians were using an app to provide a service or sell goods or rent out accommodation. Half of them providing delivery services. That's all according to Statistics Canada. It is all part of the gig economy. The CBC's Manjula Silvaraja talks about the significance of these numbers.
In 2009, the editor-in-chief of the Daily Beast, Tina Brown, coined a new term, the gig economy. Brown used it to describe the phenomenon of college-educated people pulling together freelance jobs and part-time roles to fill out a week of work, instead of ending up with a secure 9-to-5 stint in corporate America. Everyone is a hustler, her article boldly declared. And then came the era of the gig economy apps.
These changes toward contracting out and gig work in the traditional sense have been with us for some time. Apps have just kind of supercharged it.
Adam King is an assistant professor in the Labor Studies program at the University of Manitoba. He studies employment standards enforcement and compliance across Canada. Gig work is a rising part of Canada's labour market. According to a report from Statistics Canada, in the last 3 months of 2022, nearly 900,000 Canadians worked gigs as their primary jobs. Then, in December 2023, nearly 500,000 workers told StatsCan they took on gigs through an app. Geraint Harvey says the ease of finding employment on these platforms is in some ways a positive thing.
So whereas there are lots of benefits for organisations to source labour, there are benefits for workers, particularly workers who might struggle to find formal employment. And this is very important for new migrants. This may be the only option they've got in order to find an income.
Harvey is a professor and the Dan Cap Private Equity Chair in Human Organization at Western University. These apps have shifted what short-term means in the labor market. It's not just months and days. It's minutes, like the time it takes to give someone a ride via Uber or Lyft. There's also a sense that these platforms empower people to craft their workdays and make more money in their spare time. Geraint Harvey says it's a fallacy to assume people who do this work have complete choice.
There is some element of pressure. If you're relying on this for an income, you don't want to be frozen out of the app. You don't want to be removed from the ability to source income. And therefore, there is a latent pressure to take work on. We don't live in this wonderful utopia when somebody can just choose to work when they want.
Adam King from the University of Manitoba says gig workers miss out on many benefits.
The most important is that all of these people who are working through an app, especially, are not considered employees. So that means that they're not protected by minimum wage, hours of work, severance and termination. It also means that they're not able to join together with their coworkers and form a union. So they're carved out of really important pieces of employment legislation.
King worries that it lowers labor standards across the entire market.
I mean, the more that gig economy work grows, the more pressure it places on other firms to adopt similar models. The risk is that the more it grows, the more that other firms might also employ app-based technology to employ their workers on these types of gig-based or contract-based formats, in which case, there's a real risk that many workers who have decent wages and employment protections might find themselves working under these types of arrangements.
He's already seeing that with delivery jobs at warehousing and logistics companies and fears the gigifying of private home care. Geraint Harvey says all of this comes at a cost that most of us don't consider, even though it affects each of us.
There's a broader point to be made about just how this impacts the public purse and how some particularly large organizations, billion-dollar organizations, are actually accessing public funds. They're being subsidized by the taxpayer if the compensation and the remuneration isn't sufficient for workers. They draw on public money, and therefore the taxpayer is supporting these large businesses.
He wants to see reform, such as recognizing gig workers as employees or creating a new category for them. Adam King says the bigger question we face is why people have to turn to these precarious jobs.
People really need to have good choices available to them, and that requires a labor market that's performing at full capacity. That's not something that can be solved just through one policy instrument. It's the responsibility of governments across the country to ensure that good jobs are available to all who want them.
It's a call to create good jobs and improve gig jobs before they erode the rights of all workers. For CBC Radio, I'm Manjula Selvarajah.
Thanks very much, Manjula. We're at 10 minutes before 7 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Listen app. We're expecting sun and cloud near noon, but sunny to start off with today for Winnipeg. A temperature high of 24 degrees. With the humidex, it'll feel like 26. Still to come on the program, a Manitoba artist says his family was a bit skeptical of his music career at first. Continuing our series on young people and employment, we'll explore the cultural perspectives of working, and what it means to not be doing a traditional job. That's coming up here on the program. Stay tuned for that. First, though, in light of the failed assassination attempt on former U.S. President Donald Trump, political leaders around the globe are taking stock of their own security situations. Here in Manitoba, Premier Wab Kinew says the Legislative Protective Services is reviewing its readiness and protection procedures. This is what Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc had to say earlier this week.
I have every confidence that the RCMP take all the steps necessary to protect Canadian politicians. Yesterday, I convened a briefing with the Commissioner of the RCMP, the Director of CSIS, the Deputy Minister of Public Safety. They went through the threat landscape. They talked to me about the additional vigilance that they've put in place since the assassination attempt on former President Trump Saturday evening. CSIS is always at work collecting information that helps the RCMP adjust the security posture.
That is Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc speaking earlier this week. For more on this, Stephanie Carvin joins us now, Associate Professor of International Relations at the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs. She is in Ottawa this morning. Welcome. Hello.
Good morning.
Stephanie, you heard that the federal government is looking at the threat landscape. How would you characterize that?
Well, I think it's, when Dominic LeBlanc says that, he's satisfied and he's been meeting with the security services, I think we should largely take him at his word that, he himself is a politician impacted by levels of political violence, of course. But that being said, we are aware that there have been multiple media reports in the last I would say 2 years that really the security services are alarmed at the level of violent political rhetoric and political violent threats that they are detecting in this country. So, they may feel that they have a lock on the situation, but that, there is an increased and more fluid threat environment that they're having to deal with.
How much more challenging is it? Because when you think of it, depending on what level of government and what jurisdiction exists, I mean, you could have a group of police officers protecting someone who is from the RCMP or someone who's part of the RCMP, for example, or the local police service or the legislative police services. Does it make it harder to come up with some kind of strategy when you have all these jurisdictions?
Well, we have seen that in the past, right? So if you think about the attack on Parliament Hill in 2014, one of the things that seemed to have made the situation more complex is just the sheer number of levels of security that was, involved. And, we put these levels in for various historical reasons, as well as, the necessity. So, for example, Parliament is always in charge of its own security, right? So that's why we have the Parliamentary Protection Service. And then, again, here in Ottawa, we have the Ottawa Police Service that plays a role, the RCMP plays a role, and even our Ontario Provincial Police here. So in other provinces, it might be something like the RCMP, but they play a role in, like looking at the highways and the roads that are leading up to Parliament and those kinds of actions. So yeah, I mean, it is complex because there are so many different layers involved. And what we learned in October 2014, or in the aftermath of that incident on Parliament Hill, is that those agencies don't always talk to each other well, and that there is a need for reform. So we haven't gotten a lot of insight into which reforms have taken place on Parliament Hill, but we do know that there are ongoing efforts to always coordinate these kinds of events when they occur.
There was that report in the Globe and Mail showing the RCMP has struggled to supply enough officers for protecting politicians. What do you make of that? Is the RCMP fixing its staffing issues?
I don't think it's just staffing issues. I think the problem is actually probably more structural than just being able to recruit. I mean, that seems to have been an ongoing issue with the RCMP. I think this ties into the broader issue of RCMP reform. And I say this because, we talk about the RCMP like it's one organization. It's not. There are there's the federal mandate, which includes, everything from enforcing sanctions, cybercrime, or taking on organized crime, and of course, VIP protection detail. And, there's separate units for the Governor General, the Prime Minister, and then other, domestic and international figures that happen to be in the country. So that's something that they have to staff. But on the other hand, there's the demands of provincial policing, right? So, out in, Manitoba, of course, you have the RCMP is providing a lot of your police services. And a lot of times, because of the demands of those contracts and the staffing shortage, that is, those kind of demands are kind of draining on the federal mandate. And I don't say this in a negative way, because I do think, normal policing is important, but we need to kind of figure that out, right? Is provincial policing the right thing for the RCMP to still be doing in the 21st century? How do we modernize the police force? All these kinds of questions, I think, play into this role of, is the RCMP ready to deal with a surge of political violence against politicians in this country?
We have heard various versions of this. We just have a minute left here about the issue with political leaders using heightened rhetoric. What do you make of that? Is everyone at fault here?
Yeah, I don't think it's one side or the other, right? I mean, everyone likes to point fingers. I think what we have seen is an increase in populism in this country. And populism is not necessarily the left or the right. It's kind of just a rhetorical tool where you're portraying yourself as a politician that speaks for the little guy, and you're going to take on the corrupt elite that are holding those little guys down and preventing them from living the lives that they really deserve. And I think when you can present your opponent as corrupt, out of touch, representing their own interests, not the interests of the country, it does lend itself to more politically violent rhetoric, or at least actions outside of normal politics, because you're effectively suggesting that, they represent a kind of threat to the country and the everyday people who live in it. And we've seen this from all sides of the political spectrum. And we've really kind of struggled, I think, to dial it back. And I'm not sure we can put the toothpaste back in the tube.
We'll have to leave it there. Stephanie, thank you. Take good care.
Thanks so much.
Stephanie Carvin, Associate Professor of International Relations at the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs. We're at 2.5 minutes before the top of the hour. Heather Wells joining us now with a look at news headlines from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Good morning.
Good morning. Dozens of people in a Winnipeg apartment complex say they have been evicted without warning. They were living at 285 College Avenue until late last week when they were ordered out. Megan Levasseur says she didn't receive an eviction notice. She says all her belongings were thrown into a pile of garbage behind the building. People in Carberry learned a little more last night about the province's proposed plans for the intersection at Highway 5 and the Trans-Canada. That's the site of Manitoba's deadliest bus crash. 17 people died there last year. 3 potential new designs for the intersection are being considered. We'll hear all about it in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. It is chilly outside, 12 degrees here in downtown Winnipeg, but it is going to get warmer. Sunny to start off with, becoming a mix of sun and cloud by noon. High of 24 with a humidex. It'll feel like 26, so don't be fooled by the coolish weather out there. Lots to come on the program. A Manitoba artist says his family was a bit skeptical of his music career at first. Continuing our series on young people and employment, we'll explore the cultural perspective on working and what it means to not be doing a quote-unquote traditional job. That's coming up in our next half hour of the program. Goodbye to the folks watching on CBC television. You, of course, can continue streaming us on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. So far, no major closures or delays to tell you about that we're aware of, but if you see something, call our commuter line 204-788-3093, 204-788-3093. I'm Faith Fundal in for Marcy Marcusa. Stay tuned. World Report is standing by.
Today on The Current.
She ran 3 rounds here, and each time she set a new world under-20 record.
I'm Duncan McHugh. In the world of elite track and field, new rules mean some women can't compete because their bodies naturally make more testosterone than is allowed. The surprising 100-year-old history of sex testing coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Crews in Toronto are making progress to restore power to thousands of residents, and some major roads are starting to open up. A series of thunderstorms yesterday caused record rainfall and flash flooding in Toronto and knocked much of the city's west end off the grid. The CBC's Angie Seth is out on the streets of Toronto and joins us now. Angie, what are Torontonians waking up to this morning?
Many of them are going to be breaking up to still a dark home, or, because there is still a number of areas in the city in which power has yet to be restored. That's a real telltale sign of the type of storm that we saw coming in fast and furious and leaving with it huge amounts of water. As a result, it's become very, very challenging. Many homes have been flooded, whether you're dealing with a little bit of flooding or quite a bit of flooding, where in some cases you saw water sort of gushing into their homes, depending on where they are, especially any areas that were near open waterways, like rivers, et cetera, which we saw overflowing onto roadways. And we bring in the roadways as well, because we know that several of those major routes, we know our Don Valley Parkway, which is a major route, areas along the Gardner as well, were completely flooded. On Lake Shore, which is right where Lake Ontario is, we saw quite a bit of water in those areas as well. But it brings back the question of what needs to be done in the city in order to continue to upgrade its infrastructure and deal, of course, with what we've been seeing in this change of weather. We've talked a lot about climate change. The mayor, Olivia Chow, had more to say about this. Take a listen.
The federal government had provided some funding on the floodplain, but not enough. There's a request with them. The provincial government have stepped up somewhat. The federal and the provincial government can partner with us so that we can do a lot more flood mitigation measures.
Some of those areas are still closed as they're dealing with the cleanup. And if there's any repairs that need to be done, they get access to them as quickly as possible.
Thanks so much, Angie.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Angie Seth reporting in Toronto. The Republican candidate for vice president will introduce himself at his party's convention tonight. The GOP will listen to J.D. Vance speak. Donald Trump named the Ohio senator his running mate on the convention's first day in Milwaukee. Some Republicans shared what they hope to hear from Vance.
I look for a person that has strong family values. And what I know so far, it appears he has those strong family values.
I want somebody who can reach our younger generation. I'm sick of the old stuff.
And as a young person, I like seeing a guy under 40. We got some young blood in the White House, right? Like, let's get it going.
Trump himself is expected to take the stage at the RNC tomorrow. Donald Trump's pick for his running mate has been critical of America's financial support for Ukraine. But he is not the only politician who is a cause for concern for Ukraine's allies. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has ruffled the feathers of some EU leaders. Earlier this month, Orban embarked on what he called a peace mission. That included a stop in the U.S. and a meeting with Trump. Briar Stewart has more on that.
This morning in Strasbourg, France, the first debate of the new session of the European Parliament focused on support for Ukraine.
We must not be distracted from various powers in the world.
That was the message delivered by Austrian Representative Lucas Mandl.
Even due to the developments in the United States that mean for Europe to become more self-responsible. This is what.
But Europe is not united on how far it should go to keep supporting Ukraine. During the session, one parliamentarian from Romania proclaimed that peace cannot be achieved by sending weapons. However, it's the actions of Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban which highlight the starkest divisions. Orban, who took over the rotating presidency of the Council of the European Union on July 1st, angered his fellow leaders by visiting Russia and China. He infuriated them when he met with Donald Trump in Florida last week, releasing a splashy video showing both men giving the thumbs up. He later said that a newly elected Trump would be willing to act as a peace broker immediately. Orban was rebuked by top EU officials who said he had no mandate from the bloc to engage in negotiations, and that there can't be any peace talks at all without Ukraine. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
At least 6 people have died and hundreds injured in Bangladesh. Mass protests by students are turning violent. They want the government to end a decades-old quota system. It protects jobs for families of veterans who fought in Bangladesh's 1971 War of Independence. Freelance reporter Neha Punya has more.
Loud chants of "We want answers" ring out in Dhaka and other cities as tens of thousands of students block roads across Bangladesh. They are demanding answers from Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's government after clashes with the police and pro-government groups led to several deaths.
Those who shoot and kill students are not being arrested by the police. The people who are attacked and hurt are instead being targeted by the state.
Students have been protesting for days now after a local court reinstated a quota system that gives a third of all government jobs to families of war heroes. Angry protesters call the system opaque and unfair and say jobs should be given on merit. Students claim they will continue to protest until the quota system is completely removed. Many Bangladeshi residents refuse to speak to us, saying they are worried the government will act against them. The UN is also urging Bangladesh's government to allow students to protest peacefully and protect them from violence. Stefan Duzarik is the spokesman for the UN Secretary General.
But it is a fundamental human right to be able to demonstrate peacefully, and governments should protect those rights.
Sheikh Hasina's government has blamed the unrest on the opposition. Critics accuse the Prime Minister of ordering the crackdown. Neha Punya for CBC News, New Delhi.
In Britain, a new session of Parliament with a new Labour government has officially begun. King Charles today delivered the King's speech in Westminster, laying out the agenda of the newly elected government and Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Tom Perry reports from London.
Mr. Speaker, the King commands this honourable House to attend His Majesty immediately in the House of Peers.
A day steeped in tradition, full of pomp, but focused on policy. King Charles officially opening a new session of Parliament, laying out the agenda of a newly elected Labour government and a Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who won a resounding election victory less than 2 weeks ago.
My government will seek a new partnership with both business and working people.
The King delivering a lengthy list of priorities, promises Labour made during the campaign and must now fulfill. To foster economic growth, to build 1.5 million new homes in 5 years, and to target human smugglers ferrying thousands of migrants across the English Channel from France to seek asylum in Britain. In all, the speech focused on domestic issues, though did include an acknowledgement of the ongoing war in Ukraine. The new government pledging Britain will keep up its support for that country's fight against Russian invaders.
And it will endeavour to play a leading role in providing Ukraine with a clear path to NATO membership.
Starmer and his Labour Party hold a commanding majority in the Commons, but the issues Britain faces, at home and abroad, are serious. For this new government, today's speech means the real work now begins. Tom Perry, CBC News, London.
Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo gets a round of applause this morning. She went for a swim in the River Seine. Hidalgo made good on a promise to take a dip in the river ahead of the 2024 Paris Olympic Games. It is to dispel any worries that the Seine is not clean enough for swimming events. Hidalgo says cleaning up the river is about more than the Olympics.
Nous avons besoin d'adapter nos villes au climat, au changement climatique et retrouver le fleuve.
She says they need to adapt their city to a changing climate and restore the river. Hidalgo says she wants the Seine to be a place for Parisians to swim after the Games and be part of the city's legacy. The triathlon and marathon swimming legs of the Olympics will be held in the Seine. The famous river was also used in the 1900 Paris Olympics. The 2024 Paris Olympics run July 26 to August 11. And you can listen to coverage right here on CBC Radio and watch the events on CBC Television and CBC Gem. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. And if you're looking for tools to talk about the day's big stories with the little people in your life, check out cbckidsnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
And she's right, there are a lot of great stories on that site. Magandang umaga, good morning Manitoba. Faith Fundal here in Studio 15 at Portage and Spence. This is Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. This evening, the Humane Society and Good Neighbor Brewing are holding a pet parade. We'll tell you how you can attend and drink some pet-themed pints. A local jewelry appraiser says in the last month, several people have come to his store after being swindled into buying fake gold. He's now warning Winnipeggers to be on the lookout. A chat about what he's been seeing. First, though, on our series about youth and employment, a Manitoba artist says his family is supportive of his music career, but it wasn't always like that. Stay tuned for that conversation coming up next. First, though, to your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Heather Wells joining us now. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, new allegations today about the care provided to high-risk youth living in for-profit foster homes. Newly unsealed documents obtained by CBC News allege workers at Spirit Rising House that provided underage kids with cannabis were also driving the children to care homes where they were being exploited. We're going to hear the latest on this from our I-team coming up. And the safety of public officials is in the spotlight after the attempted assassination of former U.S. President Donald Trump. It's renewing questions about these kinds of threats elected officials in Canada can face and whether they are safe. We'll hear more from Winnipeg MP coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Hello as well to the folks who are streaming us on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Good morning. And hello to Abby Adiemi, who has been following the cool start to the day that will eventually get warmer, right?
Yeah, cool to warm. That's what we're expecting. But right now, still stuck at 12 degrees. The mercury hasn't moved much. We're seeing the sunny appearance outside. It's going to be a sunny start, then a transition to a mix of sun and clouds. That's going to be developing near the noon period. Our highs for today is expected to touch 24. Normals for this time of the year is around 26, and that's what it's going to feel like. Tonight, partly cloudy skies, and then that would clear up as the night progresses and will cool down to 11. Up north at Thompson at 11, Churchill at 15, both mostly cloudy at the moment. And down south, we're seeing sunny conditions all the way from Brandon to Morris, and the temperatures ranges from 7 to 11 degrees in Gimli.
Okay. All right. It'll get better.
It will get better for sure.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Corey Funk, studio director, following the commute.
Yes, besides the chilly commute out there, just suggestion if you are still planning to hop on your bike this morning, you might actually weirdly want to wear mitts. My hands,
like, actually, it's cold out
it was
there.
Cold. My hands got really cold on my bike ride in today. Other than that, though, it's been pretty quiet. It's almost like school's out and a bunch of people are on vacation or something like that. So give us a call on the commuter line if you do see something going on, though. That doesn't stop cars from stalling and things like that. It happens. 204-788-3093.
Coming up to 14 minutes after 7 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, I'm Faith Fundal. When you were picking your career, how did you make that decision? For some, the career they want to pursue is not, quote, traditional, and that can only make their dream job harder to get to. Not only do they have a difficult time getting a job, they may also have family or friends doubting their dreams or even standing in the way. That didn't stop Santa Clara, though. He is a local Afrobeats musician. He says for some young people of color, when it comes to choosing a career, cultural ideologies can have a huge impact. Good morning.
Yeah, hey man, how's it going?
I'm doing well. I'm glad we're having this conversation because I know there's a bit of a story behind how your parents found out about your music career. Take us through what happened.
I started making music in 2019. Was I like 15 or 16? I wasn't recording at the level I am right now. So it was something I was kind of doing as, I feel like I can do it better than these guys making the music. So I just kept doing it on the low. Nobody in my house knew. Like, it was my mom, my dad, and 2 of my brothers. All of us lived together, obviously. In that house, nobody knew. But me, I kept doing my thing, recording in the toilet, all that. One day I posted it up. I blocked everyone in the house from viewing my story on WhatsApp, because WhatsApp is a big thing back home.
Yeah.
So one of my brother's friends saw that story. Then he sent it to my brother. Then my brother was like, "Oh, Simi, you're making music." And I was so pissed. I was like, "Bro, why did you tell him?"
What were you thinking when you were having that conversation of why did you tell him? Why would you do this to me? What did they say?
My brother was like, "What do you mean? Like, why wouldn't you tell me?" And then in my mind, I was like, "You wouldn't get it because I don't want you to know when it's like half baked. Like, if it's right now, obviously it's cool. Like, I'm doing well, it's making sense. Then I don't mind you knowing at this point. But back then, when it was like something embarrassing, like, because even the music that I made then, I can't play it for anyone.
Yeah.
The name I used back then, I can't tell anyone. So for them to find out at that point, it was just, soul crushing like that. And that was just my brother.
And did your brother like what he heard? Or was he like you thinking this is not yet ready?
I mean, he didn't tell me it's not yet ready. He was just very supportive. Because at that point, I didn't really ask people for their opinions because I knew it wasn't that good.
Yeah.
So I just do you see where it's going? Like, do you see where the idea is going? And he's like, yeah, of course I see it. So that was even before my mom knew, before anyone else knew. He was the only one that knew, and I told him not to tell anybody else.
So fast forward to when your mom found out, when your family found out.
It was crazy.
What was that like?
It was like a family get-together. Everybody was around. So I was just in my parents' room. All of a sudden, I'm hearing my music playing on speakers in the living room. I'm like, yo, what's going on? Like, I was so pissed at my older brother. I was like, bro, I'm going to kill you.
And you knew it was your brother that was doing this?
That's the thing. I thought it was him.
Okay.
But it wasn't him.
Who was it?
It was my auntie. I was like, how did she find out? I mean, I think earlier she found out than I knew she found out, but I didn't take it that big of a deal.
But she was clearly so proud of the music that you had that she played it.
Yeah, she did. I was so pissed. I went to my mom's room. Then she was like, Simi, what's wrong? I was like, why would you play in front of everyone? She was like, I didn't know you felt this way. Then my mom came and she was like, okay, Simi, I didn't know you're doing music. She was like, why didn't you tell me? At that point, I just started babbling. I didn't want them to find out at that point, but I'm happy they did because my mom's been nothing but supportive since then. So it's a good thing.
The entire time?
Sometimes it's like, Simi, you're taking too much time doing music. Focus on something else. Focus on something realistic.
Yeah. So when you heard that, how did that translate in your mind?
In my mind, I was like, you know what? This is why I don't want to tell you. That's the first thing that came to my mind. I mean, I understand their points of view. It's like, we want the best for our son. If he wants to do this, fine, but he also has to be realistic. But I'm like, you know what? This is actually all I want to do. Back home, I was really big on computer science, used to program and all that. Mm-hmm. If that was all I did, I wouldn't be really happy. So, I get them wanting to be realistic in that, but, there's something I actually wanted to do. And my mom actually got on board with that. Once you have, achievements, basically, they start to, okay, you know what? This is something that can work long term.
When you think of cultural ideologies, how did that... How did that sort of happen as you were thinking of your story?
Especially in the non-Western world, I would like to say.
Mm-hmm.
It's like everybody has that ideal job they want for their kids. You be a lawyer, you be a teacher, you be a professor, all these general, nuanced jobs.
Yeah, all these things make sense for when I was growing up as Filipino. I mean, those are all the big jobs that I know my family wanted.
If it's not a lawyer, a doctor, a professor, a teacher, it can get out the window.
Yeah.
So it's like, if it's not one of those and it's something having to do with entertainment or like sports or something that you actually want to do, you have a large majority of children, they're like, oh, I want to be a rock star, I want to be a footballer, I want to be a basketballer. Those things back home, if you said that, it would be like, oh, that's cool. When 10 years later, when you're in your middle teens, you have to get realistic, G. You have to start looking at, oh, do you want to be a doctor, you want to be a teacher, or do you want to be a professor? So you have to pick one of those. Yeah, so I think that's where it really stemmed from. Because it's like, oh, it's cool. You have a hobby. You like playing sports? Cool. You're still going to become a lawyer. Oh, you like singing? Cool. You're still going to become a lawyer. So it's like, it's one of the ideologies that really like strong from the like previous generations.
And yet you were able to sort of navigate through that and push through that. Is there a person or group of folks who helped you push through all of that?
Well, my mom has always been like the kind of person, like, even though she was skeptical, she's like, you know what, I want you to do what you want to do. She bought me my first microphone, and I was like, when she said yes, I was like, holy, like, you actually buy it? Because back then I used to record on my phone and all that. Yeah. So she was like, okay, Simi, what can we do for you to help you like move from here to here?
So if she was sitting in this room and I asked, are you proud of your son, what would she say?
She'd say yes. Yeah, I talk to her every morning. You say yes.
What do you say to other people who might be feeling pressure, similar to what you were experiencing from either friends, family? What would you say to them about how to navigate and how to deal with that?
I'd say firstly, like, don't be realistic in terms of the people telling you what to do. Be realistic in your own terms. Like, this is where I'm, like, my family is very strict. They won't allow me to do music. I'm still going to do musical, but like, let me be realistic on how I'm going to do music. Obviously, you can't tell them, because if you do tell them, they're going to stifle it immediately. Wherever you are, they're going to be like, what are you doing? If you're making music, they'll crush that for you. So obviously, don't tell them. You have to be more careful than I am. But it also means that you're on a timer. Not to pressure you, but like, you're on a timer to start having like achievements under your belt. Because once you start doing 1 or 2 shows, you can tell them, even if they do find out, let's say they find out 2 years down the line, you can be like, you know what? You guys didn't know. While you guys weren't knowing, I was performing here, performed at EEC, performed at the Canada Life Centre. When you tell anybody any of that, even if they still disagree, to them, they just start sounding stupid. Because it's like, look at how many thousands of artists there are in the world. Obviously, all their parents didn't agree, but like, they still exist though. So it's like, and a lot of them are still successful though, because you want them to be like, oh, I want you to be a lawyer, I want you to be a doctor. You're going to jeopardize that future and tell them, you know what, do this thing that will make you unhappy for the rest of your life. But you know what, at least you sound professional. Nah, light that fire under yourself so you achieve those things quicker. That's the best advice I could give.
Thank you, and congratulations.
Yeah, no problem.
We'll see you again here soon.
Oh, definitely.
Santa Clara local alternative Afrobeats musician. Here he is with Outside.
Jeezy.
Till I be enjoying the back, I'ma be my lifestyle, like, you know me. I'ma do it 5 times and I'm on, you know me. Big feel like a girl, and I till I baby comes to my side, and I'm on. Let me call her so my dinner for my anyway. I was feeling for my dinner for my anyway. I was feeling for my dinner. I think I found myself. I think I found myself. Don't stop now, give me motivation. You think you got my time? Girl, don't talk, wanna take my time. Don't stop now, give me motivation. Late night drunk, me, you know I'm toxic. Yeah. Don't stop now, give me motivation. It's a night I'ma hit when I'm going downtown. Ask kid one a day. She said, baby, come around. It's a lot on your chest. Tell her, baby, come my yacht. Know you want me to rest, but I'm Steven Gerrard. Far away. In a back on my yacht. Quality falls. You don't wanna see me on the floor. I don't care what you thought. Must have thought I was bad and jumped the car when you see me still driving. Till I be enjoying in the back. I'ma be my lifestyle, like, you know me. I'ma do it 5 times and I'm on, you know me. Big feel like a girl, and I till I baby comes to my side, and I'm on. Let me call her so my dinner for my anyway. I was feeling for my dinner for my anyway. I was feeling for my dinner. I think I found myself. I think I found myself. Don't stop now, give me motivation. Motivation.
That's Santa Clara with Don't Stop Now.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned.
And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
Coming up to 25 minutes after 7 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, I'm Faith Fundal. Still to come, are you needing something adorable in your life right now? Pets on Parade is happening this evening. We'll hear more coming up. First, though, Paul McGowan is in for Scott Regier with the Sports Report. Good morning.
Good morning, Faith.
Let's start with baseball. Talk about last night's All-Star game down in Texas.
As far as All-Star games go, not a bad game last night. It ends in a 5-3 win for the American League. All three National League runs came off the bat of Shohei Ohtani. There was a great moment where Aaron Judge was doing one of those on-field interviews, was waxing poetic about Ohtani's season, and then was interrupted by Ohtani launching a home run into the right field stands. That home run gave the NL the lead, but it was a home run off the bat of Red Sox left fielder Jarren Duran that broke a 3-3 tie and gave the American League the win. Duran was asked what he was thinking about when the ball came off his bat.
I mean, it's kind of hard to put into words, but honestly, I couldn't stop thinking about my family and being able to go see them after the game, you know. But I'm just thankful that I was able to do that and help the AL team win. It's just, I don't know, it's a surreal moment, so I'm just thankful to be here.
And Duran earns All-Star MVP honors for that winning home run. And locally, the Winnipeg Goldeyes snapping their 2-game losing streak last night. They thump Sioux City 7-0. They can get the series win tonight, first pitch at 7:05.
Let's talk about soccer now. The head coach of the men's national team is looking ahead to 2026, right?
Yeah, Jesse Marsh was speaking at Team Canada's training facility, about that World Cup roster in 2026. For one thing, he thinks that Canada's success at Copa America this summer might work as something of a recruiting tool. You have all of these dual nationals in soccer who hold citizenship in multiple countries, and it's only recently that players like Alphonso Davies, like Jonathan David, have chosen to play for Canada instead of the other countries where they hold citizenship. And so Marsh is hoping that other dual nationals make the same choice now that Canada is more competitive. But he's also hoping that Canada can do a better job of developing homegrown players in the first place.
In general, we've got to be able to tilt the bar from players being identified at 23, 24 years old and be able to do it more at 16, 17 years old. The one way I've described it is my day job is to make the best national team that I possibly can. But my passion project is to develop the sport in this country and create better infrastructure at youth levels so that we're developing players faster and better.
Not a ton on the schedule for the men's team after that busy Copa America schedule, but they do have a pair of friendlies coming up in September. Those are against the U.S. and Mexico.
And of course, Canada has a full roster of athletes heading to Paris. Talk more about who the standouts are.
Well, of the 338 athletes headed to Paris, there are some great stories. One of my favorite quirks of this roster is that so Canada's youngest athlete is Faye DeFazio-Ebert. She's a skateboarder. She is 14. This is not surprisingly her first Olympics. But then Canada's oldest athlete, equestrian rider Jill Irving, she is 61, and this is also her first Olympics. She spoke recently about finally making it to an Olympic Games.
As a child, I remember watching the Olympic Games, and I'm not a younger athlete. I've been doing this a long time. So I have to say that, dreams can come true. And you just have to stick with it, work hard, and keep going no matter what.
Now, Irving did qualify for the 2020 Olympics, which of course got pushed back because of the pandemic. And then by the time those Olympics were finally held in 2021, she came across a problem that so many of us face. Her horse was too old. And so Jill Irving has a new horse, but is looking to fulfill a decades-long dream of winning an Olympic medal.
We'll just gallop ahead along, right? Thanks for the laugh, Paul. Take good care.
Thanks, Faith.
It's Paul McGowan sitting in for Scott Regier.
When we see Team Canada on the world stage, we're witnessing pure greatness. What we don't see is their struggle. We don't see Maggie McNeil navigating her anxiety, Shea Gilgis-Alexander getting cut from his high school team, or Ellie Black hearing she's just too old to compete. What we don't see makes us who we are. We're all bravely facing the odds in our lives, and our bravery is our victory.
CBC Sports is your source for sports coverage and insights you won't find anywhere else. Get the athlete's real story on the Player's Own Voice podcast, hosted by Anastasia Busis. Find Player's Own Voice on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts. And whether you're a hardcore fan or just looking to hold your own in the conversation, the Buzzer newsletter helps make you smarter about sports. Subscribe today at cbcsports.ca/thebuzzer.
Go sports. Right. You can also get the CBC Sports app, which will have a whole bunch of Olympics content pretty soon here. So again, CBC Sports, wherever you get your apps. We're at 29 minutes after 7 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. Plenty to come in our next half hour of the program. As it turns out, all that glitters might not actually be gold. A local jewelry appraiser says he's seeing a growing number of customers coming into his store with fake gold in hand. Now he's warning Winnipeggers to be on the lookout. That conversation coming up after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's a cool 12 degrees. We're going to warm up to 24 today. No mention of showers today. Mix of sun and clouds, and we start getting hot towards the end of the week. New allegations today about the care provided to high-risk youth living in for-profit foster homes. CBC I-Team's Caroline Bargout reports.
Recently unsealed search warrants raise allegations about a foster care provider the province cut ties with in February. Spirit Rising House ran foster homes and specialized group homes for 34 high-risk youth in care until it was discovered staff had been giving the kids cannabis as a harm reduction strategy. Earlier this year, Winnipeg police swore an affidavit in court to get a judge to authorize search warrants to look for evidence as part of a criminal investigation into the for-profit company. Police said staff members were criminally negligent, which caused numerous children to suffer bodily harm. They alleged after it became public that staff were giving kids cannabis, they were directed not to. So instead, some staff would drive the youth to a drug dealer's house to get their own. Police also alleged some staff drove kids to homes they knew they'd be sexually exploited in. CBC has also been told several arrests have been made and charges are pending. Police wouldn't comment on any of that. All they'll say is they're investigating. Caroline Bargout, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Dozens of people at a Winnipeg apartment building say they have been evicted without warning. They were living at 285 College Avenue until late last week when they were ordered out. Several tell CBC the building had been sold. Megan Levasseur says she did not receive an eviction notice but came home Friday to find a group of people who would not let her in. She says when she came back the next day, all her belongings were gone.
My apartment is totally empty. Empty. Nothing in there at all. I couldn't, I finally looking in the back, and it was all in a garbage pile in the back, along with everybody else's stuff.
The Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service tells CBC it didn't order anyone out. A spokesperson says the owner made the decision to vacate the property. A person who was seen guarding the door at 285 College yesterday told our reporter the owner did not want to be interviewed. Now, the head of St. Boniface Street Link says her organization housed people in need at 285 College. Now, Marion Willis plans to file a complaint with the Manitoba Human Rights Commission over the way people there were treated.
This was the most blatant violation of people's human rights. These folks were treated like they were less than human. It was absolutely horrific.
Willis says her group is working to find out where displaced people are going and what supports they need. Well, people in Carberry learned more last night about the province's proposed plans for the intersection of Highway 5 and the Trans-Canada. That is the site of Manitoba's deadliest bus crash, where 17 people died last year. 3 potential new designs for the intersections are being considered: a wider intersection, a roundabout, or an R-cut setup, forcing drivers to make a U-turn instead of turning left. Sylvia Kukurutz lives in Carberry and thinks the province is missing the mark.
They've given the options I think that they want to see at the intersection. But when I looked at them, I go, I don't think any of them look that great. The overpass to me is the best option.
Once a final intersection design is chosen, construction will begin in late 2025 and be completed by fall of 2026. The safety of public officials is in the spotlight after the attempted assassination of former U.S. President Donald Trump. And it's renewing questions about the kinds of threats officials in Canada can face and whether they're safe. Ben Carr is the Liberal MP for Winnipeg South Centre.
We've got security measures in place at our office, as do the vast majority of members of Parliament across the country, in order to make sure that, first and foremost, our staff are protected and that the people that we're serving in any given moment in time are protected.
A House of Commons committee chaired by Carr has been told the number of files related to threats to MPs, either direct or indirect, has grown from 8 files in 2019 to 530 last year. Well, city councillors in Winnipeg will have to decide soon whether to award a construction contract that could eventually turn into $1 billion worth of work. The city plans to build a biosolids processing facility at the North End Water Pollution Control Centre. The first phase of the work is a $95 million design contract. 2 construction consortiums are shortlisted for that job. The winner will have the inside track on the remaining $900 million worth of work. Committee Chair Brian Mays says the Mayor's office has approved a special meeting for tomorrow. An iconic plane from the Second World War is in Winnipeg today. Canada's only Avro Lancaster in flying condition. The bomber's brief stop in Winnipeg has attracted visitors with their family stories. Deborah Reimer's father was a navigator during the Second World War.
Emotional, he was the navigator and he sat in a really tiny little seat and it's very small inside. So they were able to get back because of the navigators.
The Lancaster, this one, is known as the Mynarski Memorial Lancaster, named after Andrew Mynarski, who grew up in Winnipeg. He died in 1944 after trying to rescue a trapped crew member aboard a Lancaster that was going down. You can find more on that story and other news from Winnipeg and from across the province at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. It's 7:36 here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and of course, everywhere online, including our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Magandang umaga. Thanks for welcoming us into your routine. And thank you, Abby Adiyemi, who's going to tell us that cool weather outside will go away.
Enjoy it for now. But for the rest of the day, we should get this cool weather because we're still going to cool into the overnight period. But then the return of the 30s will be making its appearance tomorrow. Currently, Winnipeg, we are at 12 degrees, enjoying some sunny skies. Some clouds will move in by noon period, and we'll be reaching a high of 24. And then tonight, we will cool down to around 11 degrees as we get into the overnight period. But for tomorrow, like I said, a high for tomorrow is expected to reach 27, and it's going to feel hotter than that. So brace for that. Brandon at 7 and sunny, then becoming a mix of sun and clouds by the noon period. Also will race for a high of 24. And for tonight, for folks in Brandon, it's going to be partly cloudy. You see some fog patches late in the evening period. Thompson is currently at 11 and partly cloudy also. We will see some sunny conditions, then becoming a mix of sun and clouds. Highs around 25. Further north in Churchill, it is 15 at the moment, mostly cloudy. Expect plenty of sunshine later, and your highs will be reaching 26. But for tonight, partly cloudy, some chance of showers overnight, so prepare for that. Down in Brandon, down in Dauphin rather, 9 degrees and sunny at the moment. Today, it's going to be sunny, then becoming a mix of sun and clouds, and your highs will be reaching 25. Though it's going to feel like a 30 sometime later in the day. Gimli is sitting at 11 and sunny at the moment. For folks in the Interlake region, expect the sunny conditions to become a mix of sun and clouds, and highs is forecasted to get to 24. Steinbach, good morning to folks there. You're currently enjoying some sunny conditions at 10 degrees, and then these sunny conditions will become a mix of sun and clouds by the noon periods, and we'll see highs near 24. Finally, Morris, 9 degrees and sunny. For forecast for the Pembina Valley region, It's going to be sunny, becoming a mix of sun and clouds with a high of 24. Now for Winnipeg, once again, we're currently sitting at 12 degrees. We've not moved much since 6 a.m. We will see the sunny skies then give way to it's more like a tap dance between the sun and the clouds by the noon period. And we'll get to a high of 24. And then tonight, partly cloudy. And tomorrow, sunny conditions and would warm up to 27.
All right. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Abby Ediemi, our tech and music producer. If you don't like the tap dance of the weather, you might like a pet parade instead. This evening, the Humane Society and Good Neighbor Brewing will hold one of those. We'll tell you how you can attend and drink some pet-themed pints. That's still to come in the program. First, though, Corey Funk joining us with a look at the commute. Hopefully no tap dancing in the ways of the commute this morning.
No, I've not seen much tap dancing going on out there, thank goodness. If you do see something, though, it's actually been a very quiet commute. It's middle of July. But if there's something going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. If you're walking, bike, and drive, I'd love to hear from you. That number, 204-788-3093.
Winnie the Pooh was there, and so was Teddy Bear. All of your friends were at the pet parade. Monkeys and giraffes too, elephants, kangaroos, having such fun all at the pet parade. It was a great day, it was a fun day, just couldn't wait day, it was the one day.
Well, what a better way to cap off your evening than with a pet parade. Good Neighbor Brewing and the Humane Society is throwing a party for pets tonight in West Broadway. One way to look at it is it's for the pets and owners who didn't win, but they see it a little bit differently. Carly Peters is with the Humane Society. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
And Rebecca Grissom is the community manager at Good Neighbor Brewing. Welcome as well to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Rebecca, so it's not for the pets that, or quote-unquote loser pets. It's actually a way to have a different way of fun. Talk more about what the pet parade is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, the collaboration that we did with Pets on Pints was such a huge success that we wanted to create an event out of it to celebrate that and to celebrate, this collaboration that we did. And so there are actually a few entrants in the parade that got really close to winning the Pet on Pint contest. And we wanted to, have a way that people can still show off their pets, because what we found with the contest was that people were really, really into that. And so we wanted to have another fun way that people can do that.
And Carly, I remember when we spoke about this, in terms of people sending in their pets, I mean, you had so many people sign up so fast. Can you remind us just how many pets you got?
We ended up having over 1,400 entries into the fundraiser, which was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And in total, it raised over $114,000 for the Humane Society, it just blew us away completely.
Is that what you were expecting in terms of the fundraising efforts?
No, this exceeded any expectations we have. Obviously, people really, as Rebecca said, love to show off their pets in a very unique way. And Manitobans also love a great local beer. So it was just this perfect pairing.
Rebecca, what sorts of things have you heard from folks who both took part in the contest, in the fundraising effort, but also for folks who didn't win?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, everyone's just been super excited about this collaboration. And I think that that's going to continue with the event tonight. I've heard a lot of buzz around, people who have a pet in the parade, inviting all their friends out. So yeah, people are getting really excited about it. And so we're just thrilled to finally be able to launch the Pet Pals Pilsner. So yeah, we're very excited about the launch tonight.
What does it taste like?
Yeah, so it's a clean, crisp, refreshing Pilsner. We wanted to design it for, after a walk with your dog or hanging out in the porch with your cat, especially in the summer. So it's just super, super refreshing.
Carly, you raised some pretty good coin there. What support do you still need now?
Well, just this past week, we have implemented an intake freeze. So we are not taking any animal or owner surrenders at the moment, still taking strays and injured and sick animals. So we still need people to come adopt. We have reduced adoption fees until next week. We need people to foster because as animals come in, we obviously need places for them to go. And a lot of times they need a little extra rest or care. So a home is a great place to do that. And yes, please continue to donate. When you buy the Pets on Pints Pet Pals Pilsner, a portion of the proceeds does go to the Humane Society. So that sort of, those donations go towards not only looking after the animals in our care, but also the programming that we have to keep people and pets together. So whether that's our pet food bank, our low-cost vet care program, as well as our emergency and safe pet boarding that we have at the shelter.
Will pets who need to be adopted / fostered, will they be showing up at the pet parade?
We don't have any adoptables. I'm bringing my foster tonight,
Okay.
so she will eventually be up for adoption. I'm very excited to have her strut her stuff. But we will have a couple of our therapy dogs who appeared in the Pets on Pints promos. So, and they're just, I'm so excited to see all the other entrants as well who bring their pets.
And to be clear, even though I use the word loser, there are never any losers when it comes to pets because they're all very, very cute. Rebecca, is your pet going to be there tonight, or when it happens?
You know, I thought about it. I have 2 big rescue dogs, Crimson and Clover. I thought about bringing them, but I'm like running the parade and kind of have to be the one to tell everyone when to go.
You'll be very busy.
My dogs are way too friendly that they'll want to say hi to everybody. So I think I'm going to leave them at home, but I'm pretty sad about that.
Rebecca and Carly, thank you for making time to talk about this. Take good care.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Carly Peters is with the Humane Society. Rebecca Grissom is with Good Neighbor Brewing. You can bring your furry companion down to Good Neighbor Brewing at 7:30 tonight and watch the pet parade.
School is out. Time to sleep in, ride your bike. Summer camp. Remember that feeling? Fort White Alive wants to bring it back with The Great Escape, a one-night adult summer camp. Hike the trails, hop in a canoe, and play all kinds of games at CBC's tent. Plus, a dance party hosted by DJ K. Chetta and your choice of adult bevy. The Great Escape, July 25th at Fort White Alive. Proudly sponsored by CBC.
14 minutes before 8 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Faith Fundal. Winnipeg rocker Garrett Nealis writes music inspired by the sounds of 2000s era pop rock. Here's his latest single. It's called Lipstick.
And a t-shirt of mine, sweatpants and a sexy smile. We got a dinner date at 9, and I said that we're gonna be late again. You say my hair is a mess, and I don't like the stress when you know damn well that you're beautiful. When you walk to the mirror, I'm watching you move. It's such a sight to see when you put on your lipstick and you're invincible, 'cause your lips give the sweetest taste of love. Put the shotgun to sleep in your lips on me. Take over the world in my body when you put on your lipstick. When you put on your lipstick on your coffee cup, little pick me up on my face when you're walking out the door. On my favorite shirt on your way to work, it's like a miracle to me when you put on your lipstick and you're invincible, 'cause your lips give the sweetest taste of love. Put the shotgun to sleep in your lips on me. Take over the world in my body when you put on your lipstick. Put on your lipstick. When you put on your lipstick. Put on your lipstick. 'Cause your lips give bomb, 'cause your lips give the sweetest taste of love. Put the shotgun to sleep in your lips on me. Take over the world and my body when you put on your lipstick and you're invisible. 'Cause your lips give the sweetest taste of love. Put the shotgun to sleep in your lips on me. Take over the world and my body when you put on your lipstick.
Out of Winnipeg, that was Garrett Nealis with Lipstick. We're 11 minutes before 8 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. It is 12 degrees, cold again, 12 degrees here in downtown Winnipeg. But fear not, the sun is out. We're going to expect a mix of sun and cloud near noon. The high is expected to be 24. With the humidex, it'll feel like 26. Still to come on the program, when you order a fish fillet, you probably don't expect a side of microplastics. But new research shows those plastics are now digging deeper into fish than ever before. We'll hear from the study author coming up in our next half hour. First, though, you might want to think twice next time you buy gold jewelry from a stranger. Jerry Gordon owns Jerry's Jewelry Appraisals here in Winnipeg. He has been seeing a steady influx of folks who have been scammed. He recently posted on social media about someone swindling Winnipeggers in a grocery store parking lot on Portage. Jerry is warning Winnipeggers to be on the lookout because not everything that glitters is gold. Jerry joins us on the line now. Hi there.
Good morning, Faith. How are you?
I'm doing well. Is this surprising to you? Because I imagine when someone, for example, approaches someone in a parking lot and says, hey, would you like to buy this $5,000 phone? People might reconsider. But what is the scam now that you're hearing from customers when it comes to gold?
Actually, Faith, this has been going on for years, so it's nothing new, but it seems to be circulating around Winnipeg again. So these are basically people. They usually are family. They make themselves look legitimate. And it's usually a sob story that, we need money to get to Vancouver or someplace like that. And they are offering you gold jewelry for a pretty reasonable price. But as you said, all that glitters is not gold. And as I've said before, do not buy gold in a parking lot.
Right. I mean, is it believable? So putting aside the sob story, the pulling and tugging on the heartstrings there, what they're selling, does it look like gold? And is the price something that one might expect if it was real gold?
So it does look like gold to the untrained eye. You know, a lot of these pieces are the same, so I'm familiar with them. So a lot of times when they come in, I know what they are right away.
Right.
They are often illegally stamped 18 carats. So you see that, you think it is legitimate. And a lot of times it'll look like, for example, like a Figaro link chain or a cluster ring, although they are not diamonds in them, of course.
Right. So they're really different kinds of gold then. So it could be a bar, it could be a chain, and it could be a ring as well.
Yeah, I've seen the MAF offer 0.999 pure gold wafers as well.
Take me through the last time someone walked into your store and you could see that they're carrying something that you were like, okay, this is not going to be a real thing. I mean, take me through that. What happens when they walk in? What do they say to you?
So they walk in, they want an appraisal, and I take a look, and I've been doing this long enough, and I've seen this enough that I usually know what it isn't. And I don't want to burst their bubble, but what I'll do is I'll bring out my gold testing kit and I will test it right in front of them just to let them know it's not gold.
Right. So you want to show them that allow the machine to show them so that you're not breaking the news, or at the very least when you break the news, there is proof, i.e. your machine.
Exactly. So yeah, when they leave, they know it's not gold, and I feel bad for them. So a lot of times they've come in and they're bringing in a lot. And with the price of gold now, most of these places are not going to sell you gold when they could take it to any one of the gold buyers and get probably quadruple what they are going to sell it to you for.
Can you contextualize this? So someone walks in with some gold. Think of the last time or the last two times someone walked in. How much did they bring in terms of the quantity or the weight? How much did they pay for it? And how much would that actually have been if it was real?
Well, I had somebody bring in, one time, I think there was about 300 grams. And they paid about $1,000 or $2,000. So now
300 grams for 1,000, but in the to-date prices, what would that be?
Well, right now, 18 karat is going for close to $80 a gram just on the scrap gold value. So, they're giving you two good deals that are too good to be true. I guess people do not understand that they're not going to give you like a 10-to-1 ratio as far as a deal.
If it's too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. What's your sense of why people... I mean, this is not new. You've seen this early in your career. You've been doing this long enough. Why do you think people still fall for it?
Well, again, easy money. Sometimes there might be a little, okay, I'm going to try and help this family out. But I think this has been going on for 20, 30 years. Back in the 80s, 90s, it used to be the Vegas chain. So now we call these gas station. We call this gas station gold because they will set up anywhere, parking lots, casinos, anywhere where there's access to a cash machine.
Jerry, you're in the business of appraising jewelry, which includes gold. You continue to experience this where you have people coming into you saying, hey, can you appraise this? And you know that it's not real. And you also know that there is an impact on people. How do you manage all of this, especially since this has been going on for so long?
Well, I'm enough of a heart. I'm not charging these people for an appraisal, for a full appraisal. So I will either do it for free or a minimal amount just to test the gold for them, just to let them know that it is not real. We've already been taken. So, I'm not going to, I've always considered myself to be an honest person. So usually if stuff is worth under $500, I'm not going to appraise it, even though they think it's worth $5,000.
Right.
There's no gold in these items. So when I test them, the streak I make immediately disappears. That tells me there's no gold in these pieces.
What's your advice to folks? I mean, outside of try to be vigilant. How do you tell if it's real or not, or is that even the real thing to ask?
If you're not sure, don't do it.
Right.
And like I said, why do not buy gold or jewelry in a parking lot? It just makes no sense.
Jerry, thanks for making time today to talk about this. I'm sure we'll talk again soon. Take good care.
My pleasure.
Jerry Gordon is with Jerry's Jewelry Appraisals. CBC reached out to the Winnipeg Police Service. It says it has received reports about these sorts of scams over the past few weeks, also saying that these scams come and go through our city and are often perpetrated by traveling groups of folks based in other provinces. Of course, if you have been a victim of this, you're asked to call the Winnipeg Police Service or your local police department. We're at 4 minutes before 8 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Faith Fundal. Let's head to your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. And Heather Wells joins us now. Good morning.
Good morning. New allegations today about the care provided to high-risk youth living in for-profit foster homes. Newly unsealed documents obtained by CBC allege workers at Spirit Rising House that provided underage kids with cannabis were also driving the children in care to homes where they were being exploited. Winnipeg police obtained search warrants for 14 foster homes and group homes run by the for-profit company earlier this year. Winnipeg City Councillors will soon have to decide whether to award a construction contract that could eventually turn into $1 billion worth of work. We'll hear more in our next local news at 8:30.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. We are expecting a temperature high of 24 degrees here in Winnipeg. It is 12 degrees right now, but don't worry, it will start to get warmer as that sun continues to bring down the heat. Still to come, microplastics are now showing up in fillets of fish or fillets of fish, well beyond the gut, where scientists have seen them. That is according to new research out today. We'll hear from the study's author, who happens to also be a student, also be from the University of Manitoba. They'll join us in our next half hour of the program. Stay tuned. So far, no major closures or delays to tell you about on your commute. It is a summer Wednesday, of course. But if you see something that's obvious and you're now shouting on the radio saying, how come you're not talking about this, Faith? It's because we don't know. So let us know. 2047-883-093, 2047-883-093. Abby Adiemi is our tech and music producer. Corey Funk is our studio director. I'm Faith Fundal in for Marcy Marcusa. hello as well to the folks on the CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. We'll be back after World Report. Stay tuned.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlanger, sitting in for Tom Power. Not many people have had the kind of success and longevity in music that Jim Cuddy has had. He looks back at some key moments from his storied career and talks about his brand new solo album, All the World Fades Away.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Duncan McHugh. In the world of elite track and field, new rules mean some women can't compete because their bodies naturally make more testosterone than is allowed. The surprising 100-year-old history of sex testing coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The Republican nominee for vice president will address his party's convention today. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance was tapped to be Donald Trump's running mate, but Vance is still new to the party. He's been a senator for just 2 years. The CBC's Ithil Musa joins us now from Milwaukee at the Republican National Convention. And Ithil, what are Republicans telling you about J.D. Vance?
Well, they don't know a whole lot about him, and tonight's headlining address will be Vance's first speech as the Republican vice presidential nominee, and it will be his first opportunity to introduce himself to a national audience. This is a man who went from being a major critic of Trump to one of his biggest supporters. The two are closely aligned on issues like trade, foreign policy, and immigration. We'll likely hear Vance address some of those issues today. I spoke to people at the Republican National Convention yesterday, and what really captivated them is his backstory. Vance is the author of the best-selling memoir, Hillbilly Elegy. The book and subsequent film is about his rural, poverty-stricken roots, and for some, his rise out of that and his journey to becoming a venture capitalist and a Yale Law graduate is inspiring. Vance is also a Marine veteran, which several people I spoke to mentioned. Here's more from delegates.
Him being a Marine, once a Marine, always a Marine. So I know he has the integrity. I know he has the wherewithal.
Is he really going to support Trump? There's been some discord between them in the past. And as a young person, I like seeing a guy under 40.
And I believe his military background will give him the strong leadership. I look for a person that has strong family values.
Vance's speech tonight comes after former presidential rivals Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis spoke on Tuesday. What did they say?
Yeah, that's right. Last night, former political adversaries took to the stage to heap praise on Donald Trump. Haley told delegates that Trump had asked her to speak at this convention in the name of unity, and last night she delivered, urging members to set aside differences and rally behind Trump. Meanwhile, DeSantis took the opportunity to criticize Democrats. He also took a swipe at Biden's age.
All right, thank you, Ithil.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Ithil Musa in Milwaukee. Canada-U.S. relations are top of mind today in Halifax. It is the final day of meetings for Canada's premiers, and there's been significant discussion so far about the trade relationship between the two countries. And as Olivia Stefanovich reports, there are concerns about what a new U.S. administration could bring.
We always believe in Buy North America.
It's Ontario Premier Doug Ford's counter to Buy America, a pitch to ease U.S. protectionism, at least when it comes to Canada.
We don't want to see the 10% tariffs.
Ford didn't mention Donald Trump by name, but the former U.S. president's re-election bid is causing premiers to strategize at their summer gathering this week in Halifax. The provincial and territorial leaders concerned they could see the return of Trump's 10% tax on Canadian aluminum imports, or something worse.
The importance of the trade relationship it is very, very significant, and it's one that needs to be maintained.
Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston is the host of this week's meetings. He says the provincial and territorial leaders are also bracing for possible retaliation over Canada's failure to meet NATO's defense spending target. The federal government isn't expected to spend 2% of its GDP on defense until 2032.
How would certain U.S. administrations look on Canada if they weren't to meet those obligations?
If he returns to the Oval Office, Trump is promising a worldwide tariff on imported goods, stricter than any trade policy from his first term. Trump would also have to revisit the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Free Trade Agreement he helped restructure, up for review in 2026. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Halifax.
Schools and universities across Bangladesh are closed until further notice. At least 6 people have been killed in ongoing protests. Students have been demonstrating for days. They are upset about a government system that gives a third of public sector jobs to relatives of war heroes, specifically the children of those who fought for Bangladesh's independence from Pakistan in the early 1970s. The students say the system is discriminatory and that the jobs should be based on merit. Youth unemployment is high in Bangladesh. The country's top court suspended the current system last week, but students want it permanently removed. British Columbia is promising immediate changes to help vulnerable children. A new report reveals a string of errors led to an 11-year-old boy being killed by his caregivers. The case horrified people across the province. But as Georgie Smythe tells us, the report's authors say other issues also need fixing.
This story broke our hearts, but it also built our conviction that in BC we can do better and we must.
Setting the tone for transformation, Jennifer Charlesworth, the BC representative for children and youth, says the death of an 11-year-old Indigenous boy in 2021 was preventable.
Our investigation into Colby's story points to a series of critical errors made by the Ministry of Children and Family Development, most notably a failure to complete basic prior contact and criminal record checks on the extended family caregivers.
The child, who cannot be named for legal reasons, was called Colby in the report. For years he was starved and tortured before being beaten to death by his foster parents. They're serving 10 years behind bars. A proposed shift to better training caseworkers to identify risk factors of violence and better sharing of information on vulnerable children, accepted by BC's Minister for Children and Family, Grace Law.
We will build a system that focuses more on prevention, on support, on care, one that helps kids, especially Indigenous children and youth, stay connected with families.
Admirable objectives, according to Sta'alis Grand Chief Willie Charlie, but he says actions will speak louder.
There's lots of good reports sit on a shelf, good recommendations that never get implemented. Time will tell if it's good work.
The province says it will create a new group to implement the changes by BC's representative for children and youth, with some of the work starting today. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
Toronto's mayor says Tuesday's record rainfall is a taste of what's to come, and the country needs to prepare for climate change. Olivia Chow told CBC News the deluge exploited the city's aging infrastructure and says more help is needed from other levels of government for flood mitigation.
The federal government had provided some funding on the floodplain, but not enough. There's a request with them. The provincial government have stepped up somewhat. The federal and the provincial government can partner with us so that we can do a lot more flood mitigation measures.
100 millimeters of rain fell yesterday. That is about a month's worth that fell in a matter of hours. The storms knocked out power to thousands of Torontonians and flooded major roadways near rivers and Lake Ontario. Trucking is a growth industry in Canada, but some long-haul drivers are encountering a new hazard. Companies are not paying their wages. CBC investigative reporter Jonathan Gatehouse has more on the problem and the drivers' efforts to fight back.
It started with a TikTok video, a Punjabi-speaking influencer endorsing a new Ontario trucking company earlier this year. 23-year-old Nurbe Singh saw the ad and signed up, But after his second long-haul trip to the U.S., the firm stopped paying. Now he's out $4,000.
Like my car payments, rent, I get behind.
Trucking is a big business in this country, employing almost 350,000 people, according to Transport Canada. But as the industry grows, so too do complaints about missing pay. Last year, the federal government issued 542 wage payment orders against trucking companies. This year, the pace has almost doubled. Paralegal Kevin Cordahy helps truckers like Singh get their money back.
Again, right, we see a trend of these companies, they owe a lot of wages. And instead of paying their workers before they move on to purchasing a different company, they bankrupt the company and repeat the process all over again.
CBC News reached out to the owner of Navkin, the trucking firm that employed Nirbhay Singh. Hardev Taggar started that company in February after his previous trucking business hit what he calls serious financial problems. Taggar admits he owes about $18,000 to ex-Navkin employees, money he says he doesn't have but will pay back when he can. Meanwhile, Singh has filed a formal complaint with the federal government but holds out little hope of seeing his lost pay.
Trucking is major part of Canada, but the people here are like abusing it. So
Jonathan Gatehouse, CBC News, Brampton.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Magandang umaga. Good morning, Manitoba. Faith Wendell here in Studio 15 at Portage and Spence. This is Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Coming up in the program, powwow season is a time to enjoy food, honor traditions, forge a sense of community, and practice spiritual healing. But it's also a busy time of year for powwow arena directors. We'll hear from one of them. First, though, when you order a fish fillet or fillet, you probably don't expect a side of microplastics. But new research shows those plastics are now digging deeper into fish than ever before. We'll hear from the study author coming up here on the program on CBC Radio 1 and on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Stay tuned. First, though, let's head to our CBC Winnipeg local news desk. And Heather Wells joining us with a look at news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, dozens of people in a Winnipeg apartment complex say they have been evicted without warning. They were living at 285 College Avenue until late last week when they were ordered out. Megan Levasseur says she didn't receive an eviction notice and all her belongings were thrown in a pile of garbage behind the building along with all the other residents' belongings. People in Carberry learned more last night about the province's proposed plans for the intersection of the Trans-Canada and Highway 5. That is where Manitoba's deadliest bus crash happened last year. 17 people died. 3 potential new designs for that intersection are now being considered. We'll tell you about them in our next local news coming up at 8:30.
Looking forward to it. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Abby Adiemi is our tech and music producer, also following the weather. It's still cold out there, isn't it?
But guess what?
Yes?
The mercury is gonna by 2, so it's now 14.
Oh, good. Good.
So we're warming
Good.
up. We're warming up to that 24. Right now, 14 in the city. We're enjoying that sunny stat. We should expect the sunny skies to stay with us till about close to your lunch break, and then we'll see a mix of sun and clouds develop near the noon period. Our highs for today would reach 24, feeling slightly, below the seasonal, but we'll take it as we get to warm up from tomorrow. Now, for tonight, still get more clear skies, and then that would leave us with partly cloudy conditions into, we have some cloudy conditions into the evening period where the skies will be clearing up, and then we will cool down to 11. Up north, Thompson at 14, Churchill at 16, both cloudy, and down south we're seeing Brandon, Steinbach, and Morris all at 12 degrees and sunny, Dauphin at 13 and sunny, and Gimli at 14 and sunny. But for Winnipeg today, 14, expecting sunny skies with a mix of sun and clouds near noon, and then we'll get to a high of 24. And for tonight, partly cloudy skies. That would clear off, and then we'll see our temperatures cool off to 11. And for tomorrow's forecast, expect a sunny day and then the high of 27, the return of the 30s.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sabi Adiemi, our tech and music producer. Corey Funk, you've been following the summer commute.
Yes, and it is a very summery commute, as in not a lot going on out there. But if you are walking, biking, driving, you see something going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. I'll let folks know what you're seeing out there. 204-788-3093.
14 minutes after 8 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, I'm Faith Fundal. We know microplastics make their way into fish, but now they're digging much deeper into them than we've ever thought. A new study being published in the journal Environmental Health Perspectives shows the plastics are now showing up in the fillets of fish well beyond their guts. That study is authored by a University of Manitoba student, Madeline Milne, joining us by Zoom. Good morning, Madeline.
Good morning, Faith. Thank you for having me.
For folks who are watching us on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream, there's a photo of you carrying a fish. And describe for folks what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so this study, we were looking at fish from Lake Ontario, hoping to better understand contamination in the gut and the fillet.
And that photo that you sent me of you on the water there, what is it that you're holding there?
That's a net for collecting zooplankton. So that's some of the work that I've been doing as part of my master's at the University of Manitoba following this study.
Right. So you're there. Talk about the fish that you found. Where did you find the fish?
These fish were obtained from Humber Bay, which is right near Toronto in Lake Ontario, and it's known to be a quite contaminated site that we wanted to explore more.
What was it about that site that made you decide this is where we would get the best sort of samples for your study? Why choose that site?
Yeah, so this site has been studied previously for the sediment, the water, and lots of microplastics have been found there because it's right at the end of the river. And so there's a lot of microplastic sources upriver, like plastic factories and wastewater outputs. And so we wanted to understand better there.
So you had an understanding that the fish here likely would have some contamination. What were your expectations of what you would find after you looked at the fish samples?
Yeah, well, I was expecting to find that the fish would ingest a lot of microplastics because this is kind of what's been found in the literature previously, but there's not a lot of literature showing that microplastics can move out of the gut. So it's really surprising to see so many particles moving out of the gut into the fillets.
I know you've authored another study looking at microplastic contamination in grocery store Alaska Pollock. What were the numbers like in those samples, and what are the numbers like in the samples that you found here?
Yeah, so in the samples from our grocery store project, generally they were a lot lower. We had a few products that were quite high. We looked at some processed foods like chicken nuggets and breaded shrimp, and those had really high contamination in comparison to the others. But the contamination that we saw in these freshwater fish was actually surprisingly high in comparison to that. We saw on average 138 microplastics per fish, with a high of 1,508 microplastics in just one fish.
Right, and I know in your abstract it talks about how if someone were to have 2 servings per week of this fish, the consumption would show 12,800 or 18,300 particles. Can you contextualize that? Where does that stand when it comes to what I guess an acceptable amount of microplastic ingestion might be?
Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately, I can't give a recommendation on what that would be. Right now, we don't really have any thresholds for a human risk assessment. That's still kind of in progress, and there's a lot of research really interested in that because a lot of studies have seen microplastics entering the food we eat, the air we breathe, and even in our bodies. So it's definitely a big question in the public and for the research. So hopefully within a few years, we might have a better answer.
What are you most concerned about? Because the findings of your study must be worrisome.
Definitely. I think there's, the primary concern of humans who are eating these fish are exposed to microplastics, but there's also a concern for the fish themselves and whether these microplastics might be having impacts on their quantity or quality, which could have impacts for fishing across Canada.
I wondered, in terms of how folks think about fish and the contamination in fish when it comes to recreational fishing, how likely do you think it is that people know that this is the kind of fish that they might be catching and that they might be eating?
Yeah, so this site was a particularly contaminated site, so it was almost a worst case scenario. So I really want to emphasize that. Other sites likely are less contaminated, particularly more rural sites, but I think microplastics could still be entering those fish just at lower numbers than what we saw in this study in particular. So still a concern, but definitely less so.
What are you hoping will happen next? You have had this study that's being published. What are you hoping it will do?
I'm hoping that there'll be more higher level change for sure. I think we need to confront this problem of microplastic and plastic pollution in general. Otherwise, we're going to keep seeing studies like this that are very concerning for our environment and even just for humans.
Appreciate you making time to talk about this. I know you are on your way back to Winnipeg. Thank you, and we'll talk to you soon. Take good care.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Madeleine Milne is a University of Manitoba student. She authored a study looking at microplastic contamination in freshwater fish in Humber Bay on Toronto. The study was done with the University of Toronto and Ontario's Environment Ministry. It will be published in the journal Environmental Health Perspectives.
I would recommend Indigenous pathways to other Indigenous storytellers because we can amplify each other's voices.
Indigenous storytellers, CBC wants to elevate your voice.
We need more Indigenous people telling Indigenous stories, and this program gives people that opportunity to do so.
A 9-month paid development opportunity. Visit cbc.ca/pathways to apply in Winnipeg today.
20 minutes after 8 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Listen app. And of course, on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Thanks very much for welcoming us into your morning summer routine. Now, powwow season is a time to enjoy food, honor traditions, forge a sense of community, and practice spiritual healing. It's also a pretty busy time of year for powwow arena directors. To find out more about the job, CBC spoke with Michael R. Denny of Eskazoni, Nova Scotia.
What is your job as an arena director?
So the arena director's job is to ensure that protocol is followed. Oftentimes, the arena director will go to the elders of the community or the powwow committee to find out, what they want their powwow to look like, how they want it run, how they want it done. But really, basically, all the years of gathering knowledge of different powwows, different nations, songs, dance styles, everything, and the teachings from the elders to run a good powwow. The arena director is in charge of basically how the powwow flows, the schedule, who's dancing next, who's singing next. When I start the day, sometimes you'll see me, I'll kind of smudge, or sometimes I'll go out with some tobacco. This is stuff that I do, and I offer a prayer, basically saying that I hope everybody has a great time and nobody gets hurt.
Michael R. Denny is a powwow arena director from Eskazoni, Nova Scotia. Winnipeg's Begonia has a new EP out today called Open Swim. It's inspired by the process of working through conflict.
Last September, standing in a parking lot, the street lit up. You said, come on, it gets better. Couldn't find the nerve to say I disagreed. So I got in my car, rolled the windows down, let my hand go to breeze. Crying, or is it laughing? Am I dying? I'm just asking. Silver lining,
Out of Winnipeg, that was Begonia with a new EP called Open Swim. She says, quote, sometimes in the process you can feel like you're swimming for your life through choppy water. But on the other side, there is the feeling of relief like floating on your back in the sun. That is from Begonia, unquote. Earlier in the program, we heard from a local Afrobeats musician as we talked about careers that are, quote, non-traditional, unquote. Here's part of our conversation with Santa Clara.
If it's not a lawyer, a doctor, a professor, a teacher, it can get out the window.
Yeah.
So it's like, if it's not one of those and it's something having to do with entertainment or like sports or something that you actually want to do, you have a large majority of children, they're like, oh, I want to be a rock star, I want to be a footballer, I want to be a basketballer. Those things back home, if you said that, it would be like, oh, that's cool. When 10 years later, when you're in your middle teens, you have to get realistic, G. You have to start looking at, oh, do you want to be a doctor, you want to be a teacher, or do you want to be a professor? So you have to pick one of those. Yeah, so I think that's where it really stemmed from. Because it's like, oh, it's cool. You have a hobby. You like playing sports? Cool. You're still going to become a lawyer. Oh, you like singing? Cool. You're still going to become a lawyer. So it's like, it's one of the ideologies that really like strong from the like previous generations.
And yet you were able to sort of navigate through that and push through that. Is there a person or group of folks who helped you push through all of that?
Well, my mom has always been like the kind of person, like, even though she was skeptical, she's like, you know what, I want you to do what you want to do. She bought me my first microphone, and I was like, when she said yes, I was like, holy, like, you actually buy it? Because back then I used to record on my phone and all that. Yeah. So she was like, okay, Simi, what can we do for you to help you like move from here to here?
So if she was sitting in this room and I asked, are you proud of your son, what would she say?
She'd say yes. Yeah, I talk to her every morning. You say yes.
What do you say to other people who might be feeling pressure, similar to what you were experiencing from either friends, family? What would you say to them about how to navigate and how to deal with that?
I'd say firstly, like, don't be realistic in terms of the people telling you what to do. Be realistic in your own terms. Like, this is where I'm, like, my family is very strict. They won't allow me to do music. I'm still going to do musical, but like, let me be realistic on how I'm going to do music. Obviously, you can't tell them, because if you do tell them, they're going to stifle it immediately. Wherever you are, they're going to be like, what are you doing? If you're making music, they'll crush that for you. So obviously, don't tell them. You have to be more careful than I am. But it also means that you're on a timer, not to pressure you, but like, you're on a timer to start having like achievements under your belt. Because once you start doing 1 or 2 shows, you can tell them, even if they do find out, let's say they find out 2 years down the line, you can be like, you know what? You guys didn't know. While you guys weren't knowing, I was performing here, performed at EEC, performed at the Canada Life Centre. When you tell anybody any of that, even if they still disagree, to them, they just start sounding stupid. Because it's like, look at how many thousands of artists there are in the world. Obviously, all their parents didn't agree, but like, they still exist though. So it's like, and a lot of them are still successful though, because you want them to be like, oh, I want you to be a lawyer, I want you to be a doctor. You're going to jeopardize that future and tell them, you know what, do this thing that will make you unhappy for the rest of your life. But you know what? At least you sound professional. Nah, light that fire under yourself so you achieve those things quicker. That's the best advice I could give.
Speaking on Information Radio earlier today, that was Santa Clara, a local Afrobeats musician, talking about how cultural ideologies can have a huge impact, particularly for some young folks of color when it comes to choosing a career. You can hear the full conversation on the CBC Listen app. Corey Funk has an update on the commute. You jinxed it, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
You're like, it's so slow, there's nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
and this is actually looking into the future, actually. So not too bad right now. But I got a call from Mike, who's part of a chipping crew that's going to be chipping up the intersection of Monroe and Raleigh today. And then tomorrow is going to get paved. So he says traffic will still be kind of open through there, kind of certain parts, but it's going to be really, really slow if you're trying to get through Monroe and Raleigh today. And probably tomorrow, too, when they're doing the paving, too. So look out for that. Thanks for that call, Mike. Really appreciate it. And good luck with the chip-in today. Hope it doesn't get too hot for your crew. If you see anything else going on out there, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
It's Corey Funk, our studio director here on the program. Abby Adiemi is on the controls and our tech and music producer. I'm Faith Vundal here on Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, everywhere on the CBC Listen app, and of course, streaming on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. It's also where you can find the whole show. So if you miss parts of the program, you can scroll through. As soon as the show is done, you will see today's show on there. More to come after your CBC Winnipeg news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, we've got bright sunshine. We're starting that slow climb up. We're now at 14 degrees, headed to a high of 24, and we just keep getting warmer through the rest of the week. A mix of sun and clouds in Winnipeg today. Workers at Spirit Rising House that provided underage kids with cannabis were also driving the children in care to homes where they were being exploited. That is according to newly unsealed search warrant documents obtained by CBC News. Police obtained search warrants for 14 foster homes and group homes run by the for-profit company earlier this year to investigate allegations they provided cannabis to kids. The province cut ties with Spirit Rising House in February, and police began to investigate. In the search warrants, police allege foster parents would change the logs to say the kids were sleeping when, in fact, they'd been out of the house doing drugs. None of the allegations have been proven in court, and so far, no charges have been laid. Dozens of people at a Winnipeg apartment complex say they have been evicted without warning. They were living at 285 College Avenue until late last week when they were ordered out. Several people tell CBC the building had been sold. Megan Levasseur says she did not receive an eviction notice but came home Friday to find a group of people who wouldn't let her in. She says when she came back the next day, all her belongings were gone.
My apartment is totally empty. Empty, nothing in there at all. I couldn't, and I looked in the back, and it was all in a garbage pile in the back, along with everybody else's stuff.
The Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service tells CBC it did not order anyone out. A spokesperson says the owner made the decision to vacate the property. A person who was seen guarding the door at 285 College yesterday told our reporter the owner did not want to be interviewed. Well, people in Carberry learned more last night about the province's proposed plans for the intersection of Highway 5 and the Trans-Canada. That is the site of Manitoba's deadliest bus crash, where last year 17 people died. 3 potential new designs for the intersection are being considered: a widened intersection, a roundabout, or an R-cut setup, forcing drivers to make a U-turn instead of turning left. Sylvia Kukurutz lives in Carberry and thinks the province is missing the mark.
They've given the options I think that they want to see at the intersection. But when I looked at them, I go, I don't think any of them look that great. The overpass to me is the best option.
Once a final intersection design is chosen, construction will begin in late 2025 and will be completed by fall of 2026. City councillors in Winnipeg will have to decide soon whether to award a construction contract that could eventually turn into $1 billion worth of work. The city plans to build a biosolids processing facility at the North End Water Pollution Control Centre. The plant will transform sewage sludge into reusable fertilizer. The first phase of the work is a $95 million design contract. 2 construction consortiums are shortlisted for that job. The winner will have the inside track on the remaining $900 million worth of work. Council's Water and Waste Committee voted yesterday to put off a decision for up to 30 days, but committee chair Brian Mays says they don't need that much time. He says the mayor's office has approved a special meeting for tomorrow. The attempted assassination of Donald Trump in the U.S. last weekend has renewed attention on the kinds of threats public officials can face. A House of Commons committee was recently told the number of files related to threats to members of Parliament, whether direct or indirect, has grown from 8 files in 2019 to 530 last year. The chair of the committee is Winnipeg Liberal MP Ben Carr.
There was some very concerning and pretty moving testimony on the part of members of Parliament from all political stripes that speak to the degree of this problem and the extent to which we have to address it and be aware of it.
Carr says security measures are in place in MPs' offices across the country. A vintage plane with a deep connection to Winnipeg. The Avro Lancaster, a rare World War II bomber, landing yesterday. Its 2-day stopover in Winnipeg has attracted visitors with their families' wartime stories. Roy McLean came from Morden to see it. His father was a pilot in World War II.
Dad told us lots of stories when we were young about missions that they went on. Our dad also earned a Distinguished Flying Cross, and something we're pretty proud of. I still have all his medals at home. It's just very interesting history. obviously it touches my heart.
The Mynarski Memorial Lancaster is on display today at the Royal Aviation Museum of Western Canada. And Canada's biggest bookseller says it will continue selling the works of Alice Munro, but will remove all her images from its stores and promotional materials. A spokesperson for Indigo says the move is a show of support for Munro's daughter, Andrea Skinner. She published an essay this month revealing she had been sexually abused by her stepfather, and that abuse had been ignored by her mother. Indigo says Munro's books will stay on their shelves because they don't violate the company's content policy. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells from your CBC Winnipeg local news desk. Corey, no, let's talk to Abby first.
Oh.
Abby first. Abby. Hi, Abby.
Hi. Well, across the province, sunny skies. That's what we're seeing. We're warming up to 24, 26, most areas in the province. Current conditions in Winnipeg, 14. It's not bad at all. We're going to see this mix of sun and clouds and would warm up to 24. In other parts of the province, in the northern region, Thompson and Churchill will get to 25 and 26 respectively. And the rest of the south, we will be seeing highs of 24 and sunny.
Okay, now Corey Funk.
I know you like more now. Anyways, Mike called chipping crew starting chipping today at the corner at the intersection Monroe and Raleigh. It's still going to be open, but traffic's probably be really, really slow going through there, so you might want to avoid it if you can. It's going to be paved tomorrow, so also probably be pretty slow while the crews pave the intersection Monroe and Raleigh. Thanks for that call, Mike. Have a good one.
You are all my favorites.
Oh, sure. It's fine.
Don't forget, the Radio Noon starts at 12 o'clock, and the call-in portion is at 12:30, and Up to Speed is on from 3 to 6 p.m. Mag-ingat po kayo and take good care wherever you are. Thanks for listening and watching on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. I'm Faith Fundal. The Current is next.